Chapter 1412. Although the relationship between Batman and the police wasn't tense in this universe, it was still unlikely that he would stay in Arkham's main control room and watch the surveillance footage with Gordon for an hour or two. Therefore, while downloading the footage, he fast-forwarded it to take a quick look at the video left behind by Brother Jew. Unsurprisingly, when the image of Fong Bujua gesturing at the surveillance camera flashed past, Batman asked Gordon to rewind the video in slow motion and finally fix the camera on Brother Jew's smile. "What does he mean?" Gordon looked at the screen and asked, "Is that a bird or an eagle? What is he hinting at?" "That's Bat." Batman replied in a low voice as he unplugged his device from the computer port. You can think of it as a Bat USB drive. It seemed that the download had been completed. "He's gesturing at the camera, which means that he wants to invite me into the game." "Wait." Gordon paused and asked, "How did he know that you would see this video?" "I would have seen it sooner or later," Batman replied. "Because you're still here." Gordon thought about what he meant, and a moment later, he realized what he was talking about. Jack's gesture was very common in the game Shadow of the Hand. It usually represented a bird or an eagle. Anyone could have guessed this, and Gordon's speculation was based on this factor. Thinking further, Shadow of the Hand was a game that used light and shadow, projecting and being projected to create illusions. Thinking about it further, it was clear that Jack wasn't so much hinting at Bat as he was hinting at Batlight. If Batman hadn't come to Arkham and watched the video with Gordon, it wouldn't have changed anything. At the very least, Gordon would have seen the video, watched it repeatedly, and analyzed it. Given Gordon's ability, it was only a matter of time before he guessed the true meaning of the other party's gesture. And once he figured it out, he would go to the roof of the police station, turn on the Batlight, and inform Batman. In other words, when this Jack made the gesture to the camera, he had already thought that this message was for Gordon. Logically speaking, the police should have seen the video first. Of course, he had also considered a situation like being directly seen by Batman. In terms of results, there was no difference, and in terms of the process, things were simplified because Batman would definitely understand the meaning immediately. What is this fellow trying to do? Gaddon's expression turned solemn. His experience and intuition told him that he had encountered a different and rather troublesome criminal. However, when Gordon asked this question and turned his head, Batman, who had been standing behind him, had disappeared. Gordon was left alone in the room. It was as if he was talking to himself. Phew! 2 seconds later, Gordon shrunk his neck and exhaled helplessly. Compared to your entrance, your exit is even more annoying. At the same time, in a sewer near Gotham, Fong Bujua was holding the oxygen pipe in his mouth as he moved forward at a jogging pace. When he left the asylum, he and Kevin got into the same car, and he consciously drove away in front of the escapees who had just been released. Brother Jew had already calculated that the escapees would all be caught in less than half a day. When they were caught, they would be asked the question, "How did the person who released you escape?" At that time, at least most of the prisoners would answer in unison, "He drove away." If they were lucid enough and had a good memory, they might even be able to tell the color of the car and even the license plate number. In this way, the police would be led to the conclusion that the suspect drove away. In fact, 10 minutes after the car left the asylum, Fong Bujua got out of the car in the middle of a road without any surveillance cameras. Before he got out of the car, he ordered Kevin to continue driving in the direction of the metropolis. There was a road sign on the road. Brother Jew used the Void Walk's ability to float in the air and ran in the opposite direction without leaving any footprints. In less than 10 minutes, he found the spot that he had seen on the road sign not long ago. It was a swamp, and as he expected, there was a sewer outlet that was more than 2 meters in diameter. It won't be long before the police find the car. Brother Jew, who was running, was not idle either. His current running speed was also carefully calculated. With this kind of speed, it would not cause too much exhaustion to his stamina, and he would have enough time to react to sudden situations. Other than that, he would be able to spare some energy to think. Kevin's duration of existence was 45 minutes. Before I parted ways with him, half of the time limit had already passed. I told him to drive at a speed of more than 60 kilometers per hour under the premise of safety. Considering the fact that there were almost no traffic lights in the countryside, when Kevin disappeared from the car had already traveled at least 20 kilometers. Taking into account the police's reaction speed, the time it took for them to arrest the suspect and interrogate him for information, as well as the time it took for them to retrieve the traffic department's surveillance footage and send someone to catch up with us. Even if their efficiency was worse than I expected, they should have found the empty car in 10 minutes at the latest. Since Kevin suddenly turned into a white light and disappeared, no one would have stepped on the brakes. Therefore, the car would have gradually slowed down and slid for a distance without anyone controlling the steering wheel or releasing the accelerator. There could have been many situations during this process. For example, the car would have slowly drifted and hit a utility pole or a tree by the roadside, or it would have coincidentally hit a car in the opposite direction, or even slid into a river. Many new hypotheses could have been derived from this. For example, the car might have been found by a homeless person and driven away, or someone might have seen the abandoned car by the roadside and called the police. Regardless, the police would have known sooner or later that I was no longer in the car. Then, they would have shifted their focus from driving away to other possibilities. As for how long it would have taken for them to realize that I was planning to enter the city through the sewers, that's hard to say. Just the fact that there were no signs of the driver escaping around the empty car would have been enough for them to think about for a while. If that's the case, by the time they think about investigating the sewers, I would have already entered the city. Thinking about this, Fong Bujue's thoughts turned. However, there's another extreme case. If Batman had rushed to the scene and participated in the investigation, would he have had a chance to catch up to me? Brother Ju's worry was justified. After all, in this universe, Batman, or rather, Bruce Wayne's wife was working as a consultant at Arkham. Even if the hypothesis that Batman was monitoring his wife's daily activities was eliminated, given Batman's personality, he would have at least monitored the Gotham Police's communications, right? So, when he found out about the accident at the asylum through the police's communications network, he would have rushed to the scene immediately to make sure his wife was safe. In fact, that was exactly what Batman did. He arrived at Arkham earlier than the police, but when he turned on the heat detection system in his eyes, threw out the hook, and coolly flew into the main building of the asylum, he found that the place was already empty. At that moment, the sound of sirens could be heard, and the police arrived at the scene one after another. Seeing this, Batman hid and observed from the dark. Not long after, the staff in the underground shelter came out. Because the shelter was connected to several surveillance cameras, when the people inside saw that the police had arrived, they opened the door and returned to the surface. What happened after that was as mentioned earlier. Batman waited in the dark for a while, waiting for the police to finish gathering information before he showed himself. Based on the actual plot development, Batman didn't get involved in the investigation earlier than Brother Ju expected. He also didn't follow the route of the car and find a spot where Brother Ju got off the car. To be honest, even if he really stood at the spot, he wouldn't have been able to tell that a car had stopped there or that Brother Ju had gotten off the car and run in the opposite direction. Because Fong Bujue didn't leave such a trace in the first place. Even the world's greatest detective needed evidence to make further deductions. Only a fake detective with a cheat code would be able to tell the whole truth without relying on a logical sequence, and then use evidence to refute. Just as Fong Bujue was deep in thought, something suddenly entered his line of sight, and it caused his footsteps to stop. What the hell? The next second, he stopped next to a wall and stared at the wall in front of him, which was a different color from the surrounding wall. In this dark sewer, even if an ordinary person had a searchlight, it would be difficult for them to notice this anomaly. However, Fong Bujue used a flashlight, which he had brought with him, to capture this detail. Knock, knock. Brother Ju tapped the wall with the end of the flashlight. He immediately realized that this wall with a different color was made of a material that he couldn't identify. In a sewer made of cement and bricks, this wall seemed even more suspicious. The edges are irregular, and there are cracks where it meets the surrounding wall. Also, Fong Bujue observed the wall carefully and began to make deductions in his mind. This material has seeped into and filled the cracks. In less than 2 seconds, he understood. This means this wall didn't exist originally, but someone sealed it with a chemical mixture that could rapidly expand and solidify. A smile appeared on Brother Ju's face. So, here comes the question. What is hidden behind this wall? Chapter 14:13. Feng Bujue immediately used his data vision to see through the wall, but all he saw was a white light that was blocked by the system. In a sense, this was a good sign because it usually meant that there was something quite important hidden behind the wall. This made Brother Ju even more determined to break through the wall. The problem now was how to break through it. If it was in the past, Feng Bujue could choose to use the telepathic finger to poke a hole the size of an apple in the wall and then insert the grenade from the endless grenade magazine into the hole. It would be easy to blow up the wall. But now, he had to think of another way. At that moment, 3 plans flashed through Brother Ju's mind. The first one was to pick up something that could be found in the sewers, such as floating cans, unidentified trash, or pieces of feces. He put in the thistle, S leather pocket, and shot it out. Then, he prayed that the thistle's power would be enhanced by the legendary weapon to blow up the wall in front of him. The second one was to use the Rankyaku to cut a rectangular area on the wall, and then kick the wall down from the middle. The third one was to directly use brute force to break through the relatively fragile wall on the side and take a small detour to get in. After a short period of thinking, Feng Bujue decided not to use any of the 3 methods. Because these 3 methods, including the previously mentioned method of using the grenade to blow up the wall, would bring about the same problem. It might destroy the things hidden behind the wall. If there was a very fragile, hidden item less than 1 meter behind the wall, such as a flower or an egg, then using the above methods, there was a high chance that the item would be destroyed by the collapsing wall fragments. Fortunately, Brother Ju did not take long to come up with a method that would not affect the items behind the wall. He raised one hand, and the psionic weapon appeared between his fingers. The attack power of the Psycho Poker was displayed as. However, according to Feng Bujue's countless tests in actual combat, the cutting ability of this thing was definitely not inferior to the plasma cutting machine. Most of the metals known to mankind in the 21st century that could be processed and used could be cut with the Psycho Poker. Something that could effectively defend against poker cards usually had magical attributes or was a special material from fantasy world. However, the wall was obviously not in this category. Sure enough, the poker card in Brother Ju's hand easily cut a hole in the wall. Judging from the feel of the cut, the poker card just happened to be able to penetrate the thickness of the wall. It didn't take long for Feng Bujue to make a circular incision that was about the height of his chest. The diameter of the circular incision was just enough for his arm to pass through. Then, he used the poker card to scrape the edge of the incision a few times and hung a circle of defect. This way, he could hold the edge of the incision with his fingers and gouge out the small cylindrical wall. After taking out the small cylindrical wall, there was a circular hole that was slightly smaller than the mouth of a bowl on the wall. That was the first step. The second step was much simpler. Brother Ju used the poker card to draw a rectangular area around the hole that he could pass through. Then, he put his arm into the hole in the middle and used his arm to string and carry the large piece of wall that he had cut out. He took a few steps back, pulled the wall out, and casually threw it to the ground. Just like that, a rectangular entrance was created. Throughout the entire process, only some dust from the cutting fell on the other side of the wall. However, when the scene behind the wall came into view, Brother Ju realized that his caution was unnecessary. After all, this is a normal difficulty. Feng Bujue looked at the ordinary sewer passage behind the entrance and curled his lips. He didn't complain too much. After all, he couldn't control the difficulty of the scenario. After all, his principle was to do things to the best of his ability. After using the flashlight to observe for a few seconds, Brother Ju removed the oxygen pipe and changed the way he breathed. He sniffed down the corridor. Other than the smell of the sewer, he did not smell anything else like the stench of dead bodies or poisonous gas. At first glance, there was nothing ahead that looked like a trap. So, Feng Bujue walked in at a leisurely pace. The corridor wasn't long, and the walls were made of ordinary cement. After walking for a while, Brother Ju saw a door on his right. It wasn't exactly a door. It was more like a door frame because there was no door panel. Behind the door frame was a relatively spacious space, or rather a room. The corridor only led up to this point, and there was no other way. Fong Bujua used the flashlight to look through the door, and what he saw was enough to make him gasp. This room, if it could really be called a room, there was a bed, a table, 2 stools, and a television. Yes, there were electrical appliances in the room at the end of the sewer passage. In fact, it wasn't just a television. There was a light bulb on the ceiling. Fong Bujua even found a switch beside the door. However, after fiddling with it for a while, he realized that the light bulb had lost its function. Of course, that wasn't the main point. The most creepy thing about the room was that there was a huge skeleton sitting on the floor next to the bed. It was obviously different from a normal person's skeleton. There was also a metal shackle that looked like a vest attached to the skeleton's torso. The other end of the shackle was connected to the bed frame by a chain. Killer Croc? It only took Fong Bujua 2 seconds to figure out the skeleton's identity. As someone who knew a lot about the characters in the DC universe, he could naturally recognize the skeleton's skull and hand bones. It was one of the main villains in the Batman comics. It was a half-human, half-crocodile monster. It's hard to tell the time of death. For some reason, Brother Ju felt more at ease when he saw a dead creature than when he saw a living creature. Not to mention the fact that this guy's body was different from a normal person's, the environment in the sewer, coupled with the activity of scavengers. It's hard to tell how long it would take for a skeleton to turn into a skeleton. He paused, and his gaze moved to the skeleton's shackle and the bed frame. What's more interesting is, what kind of material was used to lock Killer Croc and lock it until it died? Suddenly, Fong Bujua caught a glimpse of something from the corner of his eye. He immediately turned the flashlight's beam and moved the skeleton slightly to the side. With the help of the light, he could clearly see that on the wall behind the skeleton, there was a line of words carved with a sharp object. "I'm not a monster. He is." Chapter 1414. Hidden Quest Triggered. At that moment, the system announcement rang in Fong Bujua's ears. He immediately opened the quest tab and saw the words, "Personally confirm the whereabouts of at least 10 supervillains." Furthermore, when this quest was first refreshed, there was already a progress bar. It said, "Current progress 2/10. 2/10. Fong Bujua thought about it and said, "This killer crocodile before me has to be one. Haley Quinn, or rather, Dr. Quinn, has to be one as well." He paused. However, if I include Penguin Man and Two-Face, then I should have 4 villains whose whereabouts I know. With that in mind, Fong Bujua moved his gaze away from the wall and focused the flashlight on the skeleton's torso. I get it now. While he was inspecting, he also diverted some of his attention to analyze the information related to the quest, and he quickly came to the correct conclusion. Finding the whereabouts of the supervillains through the scenario introduction does not fulfill the requirement of personally confirming the mission description. I have to be able to personally confirm the mission description. Reality was just as he expected. This hidden quest was not as simple as just collecting information. The player had to personally find the supervillains or find solid evidence of the supervillain's death before they could be considered to have confirmed the whereabouts of the supervillains. As for other methods, such as obtaining relevant information through television, newspapers, the internet, phone books, or even hearsay, would not allow the mission progress to be unlocked. Let's take a look at this shackle. After Fong Bujua figured out the quest, he turned most of his attention to the metal vest on the skeleton. There was a lock on the shackle, but there was no keyhole. In other words, the person who made the shackle had no intention of letting the person who put it on take it off. From the size of a shackle, it was undeniably tailor-made for Killer Crocodile. If it was someone with Fong Bujua's size, he would not have been shackled because he would have been able to easily squeeze out from the shackle. Is indeed tough. Fong Bujua used his 100-pound grip to try to bend the shackle, but it was to no avail. However, this was within his expectations. If the shackle could not withstand his strength, how could it bind Killer Crocodile? Just as Brother Bujua was about to let go of the shackle, he suddenly felt something strange on his hand. At that moment, a force that felt like gravity appeared where his skin touched the shackle. It traveled through his palm and slowly spread to his forearm, causing his entire arm to feel powerless. This was a very subtle feeling. It was as if there was a black hole constantly expanding in his body, and as it expanded, it sucked in all the energy around him. What the F***CK? Feng Bujue reacted quickly. As the curse escaped his lips, he quickly released his grip. A few seconds after his hand left the shackle, the strength in his arm quickly recovered. This thing, Brother Bujue immediately became alert. This is no longer a common metal in the human world. As he spoke, he took out the crackpot poker again, trying to see if the poker card could cut through the material. However, the poker card could not cut through the shackle. Whoa! This time, Feng Bujue was even more curious. He took out the autobiography of Chuck Norris from his backpack and used it to analyze the data of the metal in front of him. The results he obtained were, mass production of enchantment alloy. Brother Ju was shocked when he saw the data. Feng Bujue knew a thing or two about enchantment alloy. It was one of the hardest and densest metals in the DC universe. The most common description of it in comics was that it was indestructible. It also had properties such as it could reflect any light, ignore the effects of temperature, insulate against heat, and turn matter into a state of zero gravity. However, Brother Ju was not too sure what mass production of an enchantment alloy was. This was the first time he had seen this term. Hey, wait a minute. A few seconds later, Feng Bujue realized something. He followed the chain on the shackle all the way to the bed frame next to him. Then, he grabbed the bed frame and tried to shake it a few times. His expression changed. Even the chains in bed are made of this material. This situation answered a few questions in Brother Ju's mind. For example, why did Killer Croc not break the chain and run away? Why did he not tear the bed apart and run away? Why did he not drag the entire bed with him? I see. Feng Bujue spent some time experimenting a few more times and generally understood the effect of this alloy. If the contact time is short and there is no force exertion, the loss of strength effect will appear slowly and not be obvious. But if you struggle while maintaining contact, your whole body will soon go limp. He rubbed his chin and said, this is good stuff. If I can use this alloy to make a pair of handcuffs, I should be able to easily subdue most of the characters below planet level. He used the rating system of the Super Universe Alliance here. Thinking about it was one thing, but in fact, there was no way he could do it. Currently, Brother Ju did not have any tools or skill that could be used to cut this kind of alloy, and the shackles, chains, and bed were all connected to each other. Obviously, he would not be able to fit the whole bed into his backpack. At this moment, he started to miss the invulnerable blade. With the invulnerable blade, he could easily cut up all the mass-produced enchantment alloy and take it away. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but curse mad in his mind. Sigh, forget it. In the end, Brother Ju could only console himself before he left. Anyway, I don't have the technology to make this alloy. He reluctantly searched the room again. After making sure that there were no other flags in this place other than triggering hidden missions, he packed up all his tools and went back the way he came. Feng Bujue, who had started to run in the sewers again, felt a little more stressed. At this time, he had already speculated that the person who trapped Killer Croc here was most likely Batman. If this was a DC universe that Brother Ju was familiar with, it would be easy to deal with. Even if Batman was very powerful in terms of setting, with the advantage of information, it was not impossible to defeat him. But this was a strange universe, and a Batman who used technology that even Feng Bujue did not know about, and whose style of doing things was unknown. It was not that easy to deal with. Chapter 14:15. Even the bright Gotham City would eventually have its night. Whenever night fell, the hazy sky and the howling northern wind would remind people of a time in the past. In the not-too-distant past, This place was still a city of sin filled with corruption. At the time, the government officials and the mafia were like brothers, and the police were the criminals' protection. The whole of Gotham was like a forest made of cement. Once night fell, the streets would be filled with low growls of sadness. It felt like there would be no end to it. But that was all in the past. At least, that was what it looked like on the surface. Night, 7:30 p.m., Gotham's Eastern District. 3 years ago, the Eastern District was a very bad place, or rather, it was the worst place in the whole of Gotham. If you think the ruffians at the gate of Robinson Park are bad, that's because you haven't seen the junkies begging and robbing in front of the Fingal Memorial. If you think the junkies are bad, that's because you haven't seen the tramps lying like beached dead fish in front of the Spring Rescue Station. However, compared to the situation at the Eastern District, these people were not that bad. Back then, the Eastern District was a red light district that even the corrupt police did not dare step foot into. The streets were filled with bruised and battered prostitutes. For these women, being beaten up by their pimps was a common occurrence, and even young prostitutes. Violent criminals dared to commit crimes under the watchful eyes of the public, and the people around them would ignore them as if they did not see them. Even today, 3 years later, under the premise that the above situation had been toned down, this place was still the district with the highest crime rate in Gotham. Cheap bars, cheap hotels, cheap apartments, cheap shops. Everything here was cheap, and it was this cheapness that allowed the people at the bottom of Gotham to survive. But survival and living were two different things. Poverty was the cause of crime, and that was something that had not changed since the dawn of time. Therefore, this cheap district naturally became the last gray area in Gotham. Phew. So, this is the air of the slum. Fong Bourgeois, who stepped into the slum, consciously inhaled the stale air deeply into his lungs. He lifted his head to look at the neon street and sighed with emotion. Even though it smells bad, it gives one a sense of security. Of course, he knew that to find clues about the supervillains, he had to go to the Eastern District. However, he did not go there the moment he stepped into Gotham City. Before he came to the Eastern District, Fong Bourgeois went to 2 other places. The first place was a research center under the name of a pharmaceutical company at the edge of the city. The research center was not far from the sewer that Brother Jew had used when he entered the city. When the police found their bodies, many of them had already been eaten by the beasts in the mountains until only their clothes were left. And our Jonathan, or rather, this gentleman who was supposed to be Scarecrow, because his school days were like hell and he did not have much of a relationship with his classmates, he did not attend the reunion, and thus he was lucky enough to escape with his life. After that incident, Jonathan's temperament had changed a lot, as if a knot in his heart had been untied. Of course, it could also be said that it was a kind of God has eyes after taking revenge mentality. In any case, that was why Scarecrow did not turn evil. After getting this information, Fong Bourgeois' mission progress was updated to 510. When he left Gotham University, it was already dusk. Brother Jew felt that it was about time, so he rushed to his third stop, the Eastern District. Hey, are you blind? Just as Fong Bourgeois stood on the road and looked into the distance, suddenly, someone bumped heavily into him with their shoulder and said that before he could say anything else, "You're right." Brother Jew was very familiar with this kind of trick. After all, if it was not a scam, then it was a troublemaker. Fong Bourgeois might not even be polite to a normal person, but toward this kind of troublemaker, it was not hard to imagine his attitude. Huh. The next second, Brother Jew's delinquent tone came online. He turned his head and glanced at the person who walked past him and said, "Are you talking to me?" Of course. It was a bald man. Despite the cold weather, he was shirtless. His torso was covered in tattoos, and there was not a patch of skin below his neck that was intact. "You're not only blind. Are you King deaf?" The moment he finished speaking, he was kicked in the lower part of his body. Then he instinctively covered his crotch and knelt down. Huh? What did you say? I still can't hear you. Fong Bourgeois' kick had come out of the blue. After that, he acted like nothing had happened, and he spoke like an old man with a hard of hearing. Say that louder again. You. The bald man wanted to curse, but the severe pain in his balls made it so that he could only squeeze out a few words. He also wanted to stand up and hit him, but before the pain subsided, he was afraid that he would have to maintain this kneeling posture with his legs together for a while. Come back to me when you're able to speak properly. Fong Bujua looked down at the man with a condescending gaze. He shrugged and left that sentence behind before turning to leave. He knew that this ruffian would come after him to seek revenge, and he might even call his accomplices, and that was what he was looking forward to. Chapter 14:16. It was a bar in the East District. Under the dim light and the lingering smoke, a group of drunken men and women were having a good time here. The sound system in the bar was a bit faulty. The noise of the crowd almost drowned out the music. In a way, this was a good thing because the bar owner's terrible taste in music was hard to compliment. The smell in the bar was even worse than on the street. The vomit and other filth on the floor had never been cleaned up. Bottles of fake wine were poured down the throats of the male guests, and then the disgusting smell of alcohol wafted out from every pore on their bodies. As for the female customers, or rather, the women who worked here, the bad perfume mixed with body odor was another disgusting experience. In such an environment, a man in a long purple suit who didn't fit in with the surroundings sat quietly by the bar. He had an ancient elegance and refused to blend in with the lowly atmosphere. His eyes were calm and sharp, as if they could tear through all the impurities in front of him. He ordered a glass of tonic water for himself and watched the bartender pour the drink from the can into the glass. The bartender then pushed the glass in front of him. The price of the drink had tripled due to the process of pouring the water. Of course, no one would have any objections to this. Just like those who went to the lobby of a super five-star hotel for breakfast, they paid 5 times the price and only drank orange juice that could be bought in the supermarket. However, they didn't feel that it was a waste. This was how society worked. Money was only a weight used to measure people's desires and abilities. As long as the person involved felt that the cost was equivalent to the gain, there was no such thing as waste. Your suit is very interesting. Did your wife make it for you? When Fong Bujua accepted the drink, he used a very calm gaze to look at the bartender before him and asked casually. This was a question that Brother Ju knew the answer. From the stitching and sewing technique of the suit, he could tell that it wasn't made by a professional tailor. However, the person who made the suit still made it the best with a passion and care that money couldn't buy. Yes, yes, sir. The bartender was stuttering. His expression and tone were different from normal people. It seemed like he had some kind of mental disability. She likes green? Brother Ju asked. No, it's because the boss asked me to wear this at work, the bartender replied. Listening to him talk was like suffering. Anyone would think so. Oh, Fong Bujua nodded, paused, and said, so, the guessing bartender on the old poster outside the bar is you? No, at least, not anymore. The bartender replied. A few years ago, the boss asked me to go on stage to try out a few performances, but the effect wasn't good. Oh, Brother Ju pretended that he didn't care and maintained the casual conversation vibe. Now I understand what those question marks mean. The question marks? He was referring to where the black question mark sewn on the bartender's green suit. By the way, Fong Bujua said after a few seconds, can you give me a riddle now? The bartender's face showed some displeasure. From the beginning until now, he felt that the man before him was purposely making fun of him. I think that won't do, sir. He emphasized his tone to show his displeasure. Oh, don't be mad, buddy. Seeing the change in the situation, Fong Bujua adjusted his attitude. The next second, his expression changed, and his brows furrowed. I don't mean to make fun of you. You see, this is my first time at this bar. So I wanted to chat with the bartender to get to know him better. If I've offended you, then I apologize. As he spoke, he took out a small banknote from his jacket pocket, pressed it under his finger, and slowly pushed it towards the other party. Under the dual effect of words and actions, the bartender's attitude did indeed change. He quickly looked left and right, pretending to wipe the bar with his hand that was holding a rag, and then took the money into his hand. Okay. What do you want to talk about? Fong Bujua didn't spend too much money to get the bartender to talk. Just as he guessed, the bartender in front of him was the Riddler, the man with a genius IQ who was probably one of the smartest people in the DC universe. However, in the current scenario, he was just Edward Nigma, an ordinary bartender. For a few short weekends, he had performed in this East Side bar under the stage name Riddler Bartender. Due to his stuttering, he almost always left the bar in humiliation and booze. After Brother Jew took out the second bill, which was slightly bigger, Edward revealed more. According to him, he used to be a smart man, so smart that it made people jealous. He used to have a decent job and a decent income. However, all of that disappeared when a terrible disease struck him. A few years ago, Edward contracted a rare bacterial meningitis. Fortunately or unfortunately, the disease didn't take his life. However, it affected part of his left brain. Although the sequelae didn't turn him into an idiot, it caused irreversible damage to his logical thinking, especially when it came to language. The strange thing was that even though his logical analysis was worse than the average person, his reaction and thinking skills were still top-notch when it came to riddle-related questions. When Lin Sanju walked out of the bar, the night was even darker. As soon as Brother Jew stepped out onto the street, he felt something, a gaze. As someone who was well-versed in the field of anti-tracking, Feng Bujue could tell when he was being monitored based on his instinct. Furthermore, the person who was looking at him was just a ruffian after all. He was very amateurish in his actions. Brother Jew only needed to make a few turns, and he was already able to see through the person's intention. Feng Bujue's mission progress had reached 6/10. He only needed to find out the whereabouts of the 4 supervillains, and he would complete the hidden mission. He was looking forward to meeting a few violent gangs in the East Side and finding a few supervillains from them. This was, of course, the reason why he had angered the bald man earlier. Therefore, Brother Jew had no intention of shaking off the stalker. He pretended that he didn't know anything and walked silently into the dark alley. 10 minutes later, based on his hearing, he could confirm that he was basically surrounded. At this time, he quickened his pace and put on the posture of someone who had just discovered that he was being followed. He rushed all the way into a dead end. Then, a familiar face appeared. It was the bald man who had been kicked by Brother Jew not long ago. He was leading about a dozen men who didn't look like good guys. They blocked Feng Bujue in an alley. "Look, who is this?" The bald man walked up to Brother Jew with a smug look on his face. He looked at Brother Jew as if he was looking at a small animal that had been forced into a corner. "You sure have a bad memory." Feng Bujue's expression was calm, and the lethality of his words was unimaginable for the man. "Am I not the one who kicked your balls 1 hour ago and forced you to kneel on the ground? How could you forget so quickly? Is there something wrong with your brain?" As soon as these words came out, a few of the gangsters around the bald man were amused, but they couldn't laugh out loud. They could only resist the urge to laugh and turn their faces away, or make that kind of strange coochie sound and then cover it up with coughs. The bald man was shaking with anger for Brother Jew. All the blood in his body rushed to his head, and that made the area above his neck turn red with a single brush of blood. "I'm going to kill you," the bald man said as he pulled out a switchblade from the back pocket of his pants. "I'm going to kill you. Do you hear me? I'm going to cut you into pieces. Before you do, I still have some questions that I hope you can answer." Feng Bujue didn't feel threatened at all. He maintained a nonchalant attitude. "Who the hell are you? And do you belong to any gang or organization? Or are you just randomly gathered together?" Brother Jew was well versed in the speak human language when you see a human, speak ghost when you see a ghost. He knew very well that in the field of crime, except for a few heretics, the lower the status, the more they wanted their reputation to be known, and the higher the status, the more they wanted to keep a low profile. So, when facing these gangsters, he chose to use such words. "What? You're in the gang too?" The bald man took the bait. "Are you trying to scare me with the name of your boss or gang?" "Hee. Stop dreaming," he said loudly. "You want my name?" "Yes. I will carve my name on your corpse. Mr. _Zash. I think the police coroner will like it. Oh, of course, they'll have to sew your body back together again to see my name." Hearing this, Feng Bujue's expression changed. He thought to himself, "This guy is Zash?" He quickly looked at him from head to toe. Looking at the appearance and style, it's a bit similar, but from what I know, Zash's body should be full of knife scars. According to the setting, Zash is a cold-blooded serial killer. His specialty is that every time he kills a person, he'll cut himself with a knife. Then, he'll show the densely packed knife scars naked all year round. Sounds like you're quite experienced in killing people and dismembering people. Fong Bujue didn't think for too long, but quickly continued to fish for information. This has nothing to do with you, kid. But Zash didn't seem to want to say anything more. He waved at his accomplices around him, signaling them to attack together. Then, he walked over with a knife in his hand. It could be seen that after being tricked by Brother Ju, Zash had become more cautious. Unfortunately, it didn't help. 1 minute. That was the time Fong Bujue took to defeat all the gangsters, including Zash. Brother Ju didn't even use any skills or equipment. After a few simple moves, the zero-time difference calculation collected enough data. Then, Fong Bujue only used the most basic physical skills to defeat these people. After all, in hand-to-hand combat, when faced with an opponent whose physical fitness was many times stronger than the average person, and who could predict all of the enemy's movements, even if Zash called for 100 more people, it would be useless. Okay, the exercise time ends here. Now, let's start the questioning time. After making sure that the dozen people in front of him couldn't stand up in a short period of time, Fong Bujue walked in front of Zash and asked the thug who was lying on the ground, "Mr. Zash, please answer my question. Have you killed anyone before?" Zash didn't answer. Instead, he spat a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood at Brother Ju, who was looking down at him. Fong Bujue easily dodged the puddle of blood and walked past Zash with light steps. It seems that Mr. Zash isn't willing to cooperate. He glanced at the other people who were groaning on the ground and continued, "Is there anyone else who can answer my question?" No one answered him. "I see." As Brother Ju spoke, he put his hand into his pocket and took out Bell's daily knife. Then, "I can only take some measures." He turned around and walked to Zash's side. Then, he suddenly bent down and grabbed Zash's right foot. "Ugh, what do you want to do, bastard?" Zash panted and cursed loudly, but he didn't have the strength to get up or break free from his opponent's grip. I once asked a friend who was a doctor for advice on how to cause permanent damage to a person's Achilles tendon. Fong Bujue said in a very relaxed tone. But I have never had the chance to experiment on a living person, and today seems to be a good opportunity. As he spoke, he took off Zash's shoes. Of course, as a strict person, I can't build my threat on this kind of experiment that might not succeed. After pausing for 2 seconds, Brother Ju continued. I also know a safe method that will definitely cause a person's ability to walk for life. That is to cut off all of his toes and part of his heel. He shrugged and looked at Zash with a fanatical gaze. To be safe, I'll do both at the same time. Okay, I'll tell you everything you want to know. When Zash saw this, he seemed to have admitted defeat. He planned to answer Brother Ju's question. No, you don't have a chance anymore. He didn't expect Fong Bujue to ignore him. He raised his hand and slashed down at an extremely fast speed. The sharp blade of the legendary grade weapon slashed across Zash's foot quickly. His Achilles tendon was instantly cut open. His 5 toes and a large piece of flesh from his heel were also separated from his foot in the blink of an eye. Because the blade was fast, there was a delay in the pain. Just as Zash was about to scream in fear, Fong Bujue took a step forward and kicked the bald man's head, knocking him out. Ha. Then, Brother Ju let out a strange laugh and glanced at the gangsters on the ground again. At that moment, those people's faces, without exception, showed the kind of expression that he expected. Nighttime, 8:50 p.m. Fong Bujue left the Eastern District with the progress of the hidden mission at 710 points. His luck was not bad. At this time, he was actually able to easily hail a taxi in a place like the Eastern District. Now, he was going to a place that was completely opposite to the Eastern District, the Gemini building in the center of Gotham City. Note, this landmark was mentioned many times in comics such as Batman, The Return of the Dark Knight, but it appeared less in the comics and derivative works after September 11th. During the interrogation of the gangsters, Brother Jew already knew why Zash didn't have any knife marks on his body. The truth was very simple. There was actually a knife mark on his body, but only one. It turned out that in this universe, this supervillain, who was supposed to be a serial killer, only killed one person. Then he was caught by Batman. Moreover, at Batman's request, this guy was locked up in the highest security prison and held in solitary confinement. So, Zash, who was good at both civil and martial arts and could easily escape from prison in the comics, served more than 10 years of his sentence here. In the end, he was paroled not long ago because of his good behavior. Of course, his good behavior was no doubt an act after he confirmed that he couldn't escape from prison. From the moment he got out of prison, he immediately went to the Eastern District and formed a team. He was still Zash. This was also why, in the alley, when Zash admitted defeat, Fong Bujue didn't give him a chance to speak. Brother Ju knew that this character's IQ wasn't low. He just underestimated his ability as a traveler from another world, which was why he was controlled by others. If Zash had really spoken at that time, that guy would most likely have lied, which would have interfered with Brother Ju's mission. Speaking of which, Zash and Killer Crocodile have a significant similarity. They're the kind of characters who can't be stopped from becoming evil. Fong Bujue, who was sitting in the back seat of the taxi, was still thinking about the various clues in the script. He whispered to himself, as if there was no one around. Killer Crocodile is due to biological reasons, so it can't be helped. On the other hand, Zash is the kind of character who is set to be born evil. He grew up in a comfortable and normal family environment, but he still became a cold-blooded murderer after he grew up. There was no sudden trigger. Logically speaking, since he is such a villain, he should be permanently disposed of like Killer Crocodile. But why is Killer Crocodile dead, but Zash is still alive? Because he is just a second-rate villain. After Scar, his character is relatively weak, and he doesn't even have a famous villain nickname. So, it's not a big deal to keep him alive, right? Anyway, once he does something, I can deal with him at any time and send him back to prison. You think so, right? When he said the last few sentences, his voice gradually became louder. His soft muttering gradually turned into a conversational tone. In a taxi environment, there was only one person who could be Fong Bujue's conversation partner, and that was the driver in the driver's seat. Chapter 1417. What, sir? The driver had obviously heard Brother Ju's words, and the latter's tone and voice indicated that he was talking to the driver. In this regard, the driver could not remain indifferent. Are you talking to me? That depends on what you mean by... Fong Bujue stretched out his arms, slumped in the back seat, and looked at the rearview mirror in the car. Are you referring to an ordinary taxi driver? Or Bruce Wayne? Or was he referring to Batman? To you, which one do you think is the real you? The car began to speed up, but the driver did not step on the accelerator because he was nervous. He did it on purpose. It seems that you know more than I expected. When a driver spoke for the second time, his voice and tone had changed, becoming low and cold. Same here, Fong Bujue said. It seems that you have also listened to the recording of my conversation with Dr. Quinn and found a clue to track me down. Your observation skills are sharper than I thought. At this point, we did not need to call him Driver anymore. Yes, he was Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman. Observation skills? Brother Ju repeated these words, and then responded with a disdainful laugh. What are you laughing at? Wayne asked. There are many ridiculous things. Fong Bujue said. First of all, someone seems to think that as long as he put on some foundation, put on a cheap jacket, wash off the expensive wax, and stick a scar on his cheek, it would be a foolproof disguise. Secondly, this taxi that someone is driving. At this point, Fong Bujue raised both of his hands to make air quotes. The exterior of the car has been fixed to look like a real one, but the tires are still expensive. The most ridiculous thing is the interior of the car is clean and tidy. There's no strange smell, and there are no decorations placed in front of the car. Well, I have to admit that I rarely have the opportunity to take a taxi, Wayne said. Wayne was a little displeased to be scolded, but he still maintained his calm. And before you, I've used this disguise in this car to fool many people so I didn't realize there were so many flaws. He shook his head. No matter what, I'll remember what you said. I'll improve in the future. As the conversation went on, the car kept accelerating. In the blink of an eye, they had left the road with more traffic and entered a path with less traffic. Improve? For whom? Feng Buju asked. To deal with a group of amateur criminals? Or to deal with a few criminals like Zaz? Zhang Heng's words were full of sarcasm. Do you know what's the most ironic thing? When you appeared in my line of sight, what made me suspicious of you was not your observation ability, as you said, but your common sense. And that really disappointed me. Of course, there are indeed things that are worthy of my observation ability. For example, the tachometer in front of you that only sports cars or racing cars have, and the button on the back of the steering wheel that you have been covering with your hand. These two things gave me a very bad feeling. By the time he finished speaking, the taxi they were in had already reached a speed of 140 kilometers per hour, and its speed was still increasing. Wayne's driving skills were amazing. Driving a car at this speed through the complicated urban terrain was as easy as riding a bicycle for him. I can feel that you're a person who thinks highly of yourself, and you have the ability to shoulder that pride. When Wayne replied, the taxi had already reached the Pioneer Bridge in Gotham. Unfortunately, you are also a person who will bring chaos and sin to this world. At this point, he pressed the button on the back of the steering wheel. Therefore, I can only ask you to disappear. After that, Wayne pressed the button that Brother Jew thought was suspicious. Once the button was pressed, the steering wheel in front of Wayne automatically retracted into the car. At the same time, the roof above the driver's seat quickly opened to form a gap. Bang! The next second, with a loud bang, Wayne, who was wearing the seatbelt, was sent flying along with the seat that he was sitting on. As for the taxi itself, it was traveling at a speed of nearly 200 kilometers per hour. Following an empty path under the Pioneer Bridge, it charged downhill. 3 seconds later, it crashed through the guardrail by the riverside and fell into the cold Gettin River. The splash of the metal object had not dissipated when Wayne, who was sent flying into the air, bent down to press a safety switch under the seat. The reason this switch was installed under the seat was obvious, because it was used to detonate the whole car, so the design had to ensure that it could only be pressed after the ejection function of the driver's seat was activated. Boom! When the self-destruct device was activated, there was a flash of flame and a muffled sound. The car exploded underwater. After pressing the switch and getting out of the seat, Wayne did a few gymnastics exercises in the air about 10 meters before landing firmly on the ground. Just as he had planned, on such a dark night, in such a deserted place, there were no witnesses. Of course, even if there were, it did not matter. No one would recognize him. Even though from Feng Bujua's perspective, Wayne's disguise was useless, for most people, it was enough. If one understood the American police's process of asking for the characteristics of a suspect from a witness, then one would be able to come up with the most effective disguise method. Exaggerated wigs, fake beards, makeup techniques that were commonly seen in movies and television, but they were not that practical. Sometimes, the police would even realize that the person had deliberately put on a disguise. In fact, Brother Jew had listed out the key points of the best disguise method when he was lecturing Wayne earlier. First, skin tone, which could be fixed with foundation. Second, clothing, which could not be explained. Third, hairstyle, which was the same as above. Fourth, a single distinctive feature, such as a long and narrow scar, a conspicuous tattoo, a festering sore, something that could divert the attention of others, and it was best to stick it on the face. As long as the above 4 points were achieved, even if someone saw the disguise, it would be easy to mislead the police investigation. For example, if a passerby happened to be nearby and saw Wayne from a distance by the light of a street lamp, he would not be able to recognize him. When questioned by the police, the passerby would simply follow the lead of the police's questions and say, "He's a Latino man with brown skin, about 6 feet tall, and has a long scar on his face." This was already considered reliable. But would this kind of testimony lead the investigation to Bruce Wayne, a white billionaire without a scar on his face? That would be the opposite of what they were going to do. After Wayne stood still, He immediately raised his left hand and pressed the screen of his watch. Computer, check my physical condition. Checking in progress. Respiratory system normal. Pulse and blood pressure slightly above average, decreasing. No obvious external injuries. Muscles and knee joints are slightly damaged. Connecting belt injection device. Supplement has been injected. It is estimated to neutralize the lactic acid effect in the body and repair the damage in 10 seconds. This emotionless computer voice was directly transmitted to Wayne's inner ear through a special communication device in his cochlea. Even if someone was face-to-face with him, they would not be able to hear it. While he was narrating, Wayne had already walked to the driver's seat that had fallen to the ground not far away. He quickly destroyed it with the miniature incendiary bomb he carried. Then, he looked around a few times before disappearing into the darkness of the night. At the same time, in the Gotham River, Fong Bujua had a pipe in his mouth. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood on the riverbed at the bottom of the river. The wreckage of the car was less than 20 meters away from him. If Brother Ju wanted to, he could have left the car earlier than Wayne, but he did not. After he figured out the other party's intention, he chose to beat him at his own game. The moment the car dived into the water, he knew that he had left Wayne's line of sight. At this time, he twisted his body and used Renkyaku to remove a door from the back seat. Then, he jumped out of the car through the opening. However, just as he jumped out of the car, the explosion happened. The shockwave from the underwater explosion pushed Brother Ju away from the center of the explosion and caused him to lose some life points. Of course, this damage was not enough to kill him. Son of Gotham, decisive and decisive. With the help of the oxygen pipe, Fong Bujua could not only breathe underwater, but he could also talk to himself while blowing bubbles. Unfortunately, as Batman, your way of doing things has gone a bit too far. He stood there and waited for a while before adding, "It has been more than 2 minutes already. Why is he still not coming down?" He looked to the side and muttered to himself. As expected, he also knew that without sufficient equipment, even if he had a diving ability that was close to the limits of a human being, it would still be impossible for him to complete his investigation in this dark river. However, with his intelligence, he would not give up until he found my body. Then, from the time he returned to the Batcave, to the time he drove the submarine here, to the time he confirmed that my body was not in the car and that it was not washed downstream by the river. In total, I've managed to buy him more than an hour. With that thought in mind, Brother Ju shrugged. Sigh. Doing a hidden mission sure is tiring. His sigh came from helplessness. At that moment, he understood that time was the difficulty of this scenario. For this kind of non-sleeping mode, normal difficulty scenario, the time needed to clear it would not be that long. With the 1:2 ratio in non-sleeping mode, 8 hours in real life, or 16 hours in game, was the upper limit. To be honest, if Brother Ju wanted to finish the scenario as soon as possible, he could have done it 6 hours earlier. The method was simple. There were only 3 steps. 1. Create a commotion in Arkham to lure Batman out. 2. Set a trap. 3. Kill Batman. However, to find the chance to interact with the High God and to solve the confusion that the introduction had given him, Fong Bujua did not do that. He chose to drag out the progress of the scenario and successfully found the hidden mission. Brother Ju even gave up a close chance to kill Batman. When he was on the bus earlier, if he wanted to, he could have killed Bruce Wayne, who was not even wearing a batsuit, with just a few simple actions from the back seat. In the end, all of this forbearance was for the sake of buying time. Obviously, Fong Bujua's dedication to solving the puzzle far exceeded his desire to clear the scenario. Other than that, there was also his personal dissatisfaction with the strange state of this world that drove him to do something even more dangerous. Night, 9:50 p.m. For some people, this was already close to bedtime, but for another group of people, this was the beginning of their exciting lives. This was the banquet restaurant on the top floor of one of the Twin Towers in Gotham. The well-dressed celebrities gathered here, doing what they did every day, exchanging benefits with each other in a circle full of hypocrisy and lies, and cursing each other in their hearts to die early. Tonight's banquet was hosted by Mayor Coppola. The purpose was to celebrate his victory in the recent poll. Other than the familiar faces of Gotham's high society, the mayor also invited two people who did not fit in with the atmosphere there: Prosecutor Harvey Dent and Police Commissioner James Gordon. However, Gordon didn't come. When Mayor Coppola heard the news, he did not appear too surprised. "I'm sure you've heard," Prosecutor Dent, who was talking to him, said in a serious tone. "There was a serious incident in Arkham this afternoon, and the perpetrator is the same person as the suspect in last night's fire axe slashing case." "I know all that," Coppola said. Coppola continued, "I also know that the guy who calls himself Jack is still missing. The thought of such a crazy criminal still wandering the streets gives me goosebumps." He paused and lowered his voice. "By the way, did our mysterious Dark Knight do anything?" Dent took a sip of the champagne in his hand and pursed his lips. "How would I know? Gordon is only closer to him." He paused for half a second. "Wait, Mr. Mayor, you're not still suspecting that I'm Batman, are you?" "Are you?" Coppola widened his eyes and asked expectantly. "Of course not." Dent rolled his eyes. Compared to the dark version, Penguin and Two-Face, who had always been good people, did not seem to be oppressive at all. One was amiable, and the other was honest. Fortunately, both of them still had their IQ. As good people, their ability to work in their positions was outstanding. "Sir, you can't go in." Halfway through the banquet, there was a sudden commotion at the entrance. A waiter's voice gradually became louder, and it attracted everyone's attention. "Sir, sir." He could only pick up the walkie-talkie. "Security, there's a man in a purple suit at the entrance. We've seen him. Leave him to us." Before the waiter could finish his sentence, the security guard's response came through the walkie-talkie. At the same time, 3 or 4 well-trained brawny men rushed toward their target at breakneck speed. However, when they were about 5 meters away from the man, they heard the sound of something breaking through the wind. In the blink of an eye, the security guard screamed in pain and fell to the ground. Some of the guests with sharp eyes noticed that at that moment, it looked like a few cards flashing with black light had flown out of the uninvited guest's hand. Click! Bang! Even though Fong Bujue did not rely on firearms, he still took some time to get some ammunition before he came to control the situation in a way that the people around him could understand. At that moment, he took out a terrifying-looking shotgun and fired a shot at the ceiling. As soon as the shotgun went off, screams rang out. Even though the men did not scream, their reactions were similar to the women's. Most of them instinctively bent down and looked away from the direction of the gunshot. Some of them were more alert, and they were already moving toward the exit. This was all within his expectations. Brother Jew did not care about this bunch of passers-by escaping. "Good night, ladies and gentlemen." After firing the shotgun, Fong Bujue walked slowly toward the center of the banquet hall. "Everyone, don't panic. I'm here to look for 2 people. As he spoke, he did not let his guard down. He knew that with the mayor present, other than the security guards in the banquet hall, there would also be the mayor's own armed security force. The first one is Mayor Copperport. As Brother Jew said this, he quickly found the mayor's location through the gazes of the passers-by. The second one is Prosecutor Dent. Coincidentally, the mayor and prosecutor were standing together. This saved Brother Jew a lot of trouble. "Ah, very good. Both of you are here." Fong Bujue confirmed the location of his targets and quickened his pace. "Freeze!" At that moment, 2 bodyguards in suits rushed out to block the mayor and the prosecutor. Both of them took out their pistols and aimed at Brother Jew. One of them even yelled, "Freeze!" A common usage of freeze. Some people might think that they were stupid. They could have just opened fire. What was the point of yelling? However, there was nothing wrong with what they did. At that moment, there were many guests around Fong Bujue. Some of them were running away, and some of them were still standing there, not knowing what to do. If they fired in Brother Jew's direction and missed, who knew where the bullet would fly? What if it hit one of the tycoons next to him? Huh. Fong Bujue looked at the 2 bodyguards and smiled. "I knew this would happen." As he spoke, he opened his suit, revealing 2 rows of explosives. "Fortunately, I came prepared." Chapter 1418. Gotham River, a black river. Before Gotham became a commercial city, it was a typical industrial city. Years of pollution changed the color of the river that spanned across the two ends of the city. Today, no matter how much money people spent to clean it up, it would not be able to return to its original state. This was the case for many things in the world. It was easy to go from clear to turbid, but difficult to go from turbid to clear. It was easy to go from white to black, but to go from black to white, it required a high price. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. The sound of propellers spinning under the water was accompanied by bubbles as they floated up to the surface of the river. In this dark night, no one would notice what was happening in this wide, turbid river. At this moment, a bat-powered submarine, if you wanted to call it that, was slowly moving on the riverbed. And the person driving it was naturally Batman. About an hour ago, after Wayne disguised himself as a taxi driver and ambushed Fong Bujua, he entered an underground tunnel not far from Pioneer Bridge. This kind of tunnel that covered the entire city was something he had spent many years developing. The slow development was not due to technical reasons, but simply because he had to find a way to avoid places that might become subway lines in the next few years. The entrances were located in every corner of Gotham, and Wayne had to scan his own iris to open them. There were simple tracks and small maglev cabins in the tunnel, which could help Wayne travel quickly in the city. Other than that, there was some bat-powered equipment hidden in certain places in the tunnel in case of an emergency. Of course, the spare equipment didn't include the submarine. Therefore, Wayne still had to return to his Batcave, activate the submarine, and follow the tributary of the river into the Gotham River, heading to the place where his fake taxi sunk. This process undoubtedly took him a lot of time. If he could successfully find Jack's body in the wreckage after the explosion, then the time spent would have been worth it. But this kid actually escaped? Looking at the image on the scanner, Wayne was surprised and then fell into deep thought. How did he do it? From Arkham's surveillance video, he didn't show any other special abilities except for his slightly stronger physical fitness. Could it be that his strange companion rescued him? He quickly denied this speculation. No way. To do that, he would have to have his accomplice wear a full set of diving equipment and wait at the bottom of the water. Then, he would have to get him out of the car within 1 second after the car entered the water, unless he knew the exact point of the crash beforehand, and there can't be a 1-meter error. Only then would he be able to make such an arrangement. However, the exact point of the crash, even I, as the driver, have no idea. Reasoning is like walking in a labyrinth, of which the truth is the exit. And in this labyrinth, when you come to a dead end, you often have to step back and find another way to go on. Don't waste your time in that dead end. It's a trifle to lose your time, but it's a disaster to be trapped there forever. Then, did he break the car window at the last moment and escape from the car? Wayne was obviously a veteran in mazes of inference. He immediately retreated from the dead end and found another way. My timing of the explosion was undoubtedly perfect. If I had done it earlier, the sound of the explosion wouldn't have been covered by the river. If I had done it later, he would have had more time to react and act. In these few seconds, the influx of water would have seriously hindered his movements. Even if he had broken the car window, he wouldn't have been able to escape the car in time. At the moment the car exploded, he could only have stuck half of his body out. Thinking of this, Wayne's gaze moved away from the scanning device. He immediately turned the direction of the submarine dozens of degrees and aimed at the downstream of the river. In that case, maybe the shock wave of the explosion pushed his body out. I should look downstream. Maybe I can find him, Wayne thought as he began to accelerate the submarine. Wait, but in that second, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. The inspiration was like a warm current, pouring a series of thoughts into his mind. The gesture Fong Bujua made to the surveillance camera, and every word he said before he fell into the water, they all reappeared in front of Wayne's eyes. He wanted to invite me into the game from the beginning. He also knew that I would definitely fall into the trap. Wayne couldn't help but mutter to himself. At this moment, he had to say these words to help himself concentrate more. When he got in my car, he had already seen through my identity. He could have pretended not to know. Without talking to me, he suddenly attacked me from behind, or he could have just jumped out of the car and run away. He paused for half a second and said, even at the last moment, he still had a chance to escape. He even deliberately pointed out that there was a button behind my steering wheel, which means that he had already anticipated the danger that was coming. Thinking of this, under Wayne's mask, cold sweat soaked his resolute and handsome face. Now that I think about it, this Jack is one step ahead of me in every aspect, but he didn't make use of that one-step advantage. Why? Wayne felt fear. In this world, he had never been so afraid before. Time. Perhaps fear had stimulated his brain. Wayne's mind became sharper. 2 seconds later, he found the correct answer. He was hiding his ability from the beginning. Before I drove the car into the river, he had already guessed what I was going to do, or at least, he had already considered this possibility, but he didn't care, because he was prepared to face every possibility. Not only does he have some kind of special ability that I still don't know, but he is very strong. If he wanted to kill me, I would have been dead a long time ago, but for some reason, he wanted me to live, and at the same time, he didn't want me to hinder his actions, so he jumped into my trap to buy himself time. After Wayne's question was answered, he quickly operated the panel before him and had his communicator start to receive the police's communication signal. In less than 30 seconds, he received the news of the incident at the Twin Towers from the police's communication frequency. Damn it! Wayne could no longer keep his cool. He cursed, stood up, and ran to the back of the submarine. Due to Arkham's prison break that afternoon, more than half of the city's police force was still stationed in the countryside, and this half was the elite force that dealt with serious cases. Currently, the police in Gotham City could only maintain basic law and order, but to expect them to save the mayor was no different from a fool's dream. Therefore, the only person that the mayor and the rest could count on was Batman. Prepare to activate the three-point shot program. Wayne, who walked into the back of the submarine, fixed himself firmly on a horizontal seat with practiced movements and used voice to give an order to the computer. Sir, based on the results of the previous test, the safety of this program. The computer did not immediately execute his order, but tried to inform him of the risks of this action. Wayne did not let the computer finish its sentence and directly interrupted. Activate the program. The target is at the Twin Towers in the city center. Quick. Yes, sir. Three-point shot program activated, calibrating the target. Accompanied by the emotionless voice of the computer, a layer of translucent light film projected out from under the metal panel and wrapped around the seat that Wayne was lying on, turning it into a rugby ball-shaped device. Calculating the probability of obstacles appearing, adjusting the best parabola, entering projection process in 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, and when the countdown ended, the ultra-long distance three-point shot shot out from a tube above the submarine, broke through the water of the Gotham River, and flew diagonally into the sky. At the same time, in the banquet hall on the top floor of the Twin Towers. Gentlemen, I know your minds are in a mess right now. Let me help you clear your thoughts. Fong Bujues spoke as he approached them. If any of you shoot at me, there's a very high probability that the 5 of us will die together. And if I shoot at you, bang. With that said, he actually fired a shot. However, this shot was not aimed at anyone. He only shattered the glass of the building behind the mayor. Before the shock brought by the gunshot faded, a gust of wind from the tall building blew in from the big hole in the glass. The 4 people close to the gap almost instinctively knelt on the ground and lowered their center of gravity. They were afraid that they would be blown out of the building by the wind. It might not bring a worse result, right? Looking at the reaction of the people in front of him, Fong Bujue opened his arms, welcomed the cold wind in front of him, and laughed wantonly. You're crazy. Dent used his hand to cover his messy hair and shouted in the wind, What do you want? I just want to ask you, and the mayor, a question. At this time, Fong Bujue was no longer close to the other party because he knew that if he continued to approach, the 2 bodyguards had a certain degree of confidence that they could directly shoot his head without triggering the bomb. As long as you answer me truthfully, you don't need to ask me to leave. I'll leave on my own. After that, Brother Ju swung his arm, put the gun on his shoulder, and then like a drunkard, staggered to a table next to him. He picked up a glass of champagne on the table and drank it in one gulp. His actions seemed crazy, but in fact, every step he took had a deeper meaning. The gun on his shoulder, the unpredictable movements, the exaggerated manner in which he drank the champagne. These were all measures to prevent others from aiming at his head. Coupled with the interference of the wind, even though the other guests in the banquet hall had left at this moment, the two bodyguards still couldn't shoot this crazy man who had explosives strapped to his body. What do you want to know? 2 seconds later, Mayor Copotter also spoke. Of course, he was also shouting at the top of his lungs. It's very simple. Fong Bujua looked sideways at the two men and replied, "Please, clearly, tell me your full names." This request was a little strange, but in the eyes of the 4 people in front of the window, it didn't matter whether the request made by a crazy man was logical or not. Since he was now in control of the situation, for a request like this, they just had to satisfy him. "I'm Oswald Chesterfield Copotter." Mayor Copotter waited for a second and said his name. "I'm Harvey Apollo Dent." Dent followed closely behind. "Mission progress updated." After they said their names, the system audio rang in Fong Bujua's ears. At this point, his hidden mission progress had reached 9 out of 10. The 9 supervillains that he already knew were: Harley Quinn, now a psychiatrist, is married to Bruce Wayne. Killer Crocodile, imprisoned in a secret room in the sewers, dead. Mr. Freeze, now a normal researcher. Poison Ivy, now a normal university student. Scarecrow, now a psychology professor at Gotham University. Riddler, now a bartender with a brain disease. Zaz, now a parolee with a permanent disability. Penguin, now the mayor of Gotham University. Two-Face, now a district attorney of Gotham City. He only needed to find the whereabouts of one more supervillain, and Fong Bujua would be able to complete the hidden mission. Then, he would be able to uncover the truth that was hidden under the surface of this world without supervillains. Bang, 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 bang. Just as Brother Bujua got the response that he wanted, the glass at the other end of the ballroom shattered. But this glass was not shattered by a gun. It was shattered from the outside by a rugby ball-shaped capsule. Bang! The capsule that broke through the window did not stop sliding. A burst of gas announced that it had been opened. Then, from a cloud of white smoke, a black shadow with a cape slowly appeared. Do you know what annoys me the most? The voice that sounded like terminal throat cancer arrived as expected. You could be 3 steps ahead of me, but you always wait until I am 1 step behind you before you leave. Huh? Fong Bujua looked at the newcomer and tossed away the gun with a smile. He quickly removed the fake explosives from his shirt and tossed them to the ground. You think you're only 3 steps behind me? Wayne ignored his provocation and continued. I can feel that you enjoy this process very much. Whether you win or lose is not important to you. But it is important to you, Fong Bujua continued. Sigh. Wayne sighed. He looked at the 2 bodyguards of the mayor and raised his voice slightly. Why don't you shoot? The 2 bodyguards were stunned by his question. Wayne's question had hit the nail on the head. Technically speaking, Fong Bujua had already tossed the bomb, and he was facing away from them. They could have aimed at his back, and at that distance, even if they did not have 100% accuracy, they should have at least an 80% chance of hitting his torso. He's been disarmed. We should arrest him according to the procedure. A few seconds later, Dent was the first to react. He gave such an answer with a straight face. Humph! Wayne snorted and said to Brother Bujua, I think you should understand, right? Why? I want to win, why? I have to win. I understand, Fong Bujua said, but I don't agree. Oh, Wayne was puzzled. Are you saying that I'm wrong? Of course you're wrong, Brother Bujua replied. Ridiculous, Wayne commented in a cold tone. He was obviously not swayed by Brother Bujua's denial. I don't expect you to understand immediately, Fong Bujua said, but I'll leave you with these words. If a person's principles transcend everything, then it's an extreme selfishness. Oh, Wayne heard something from the other party's words. It sounds like you think you can still leave this place. I've already achieved my goal. Why should I stay here? Fong Bujua spread out his hands and replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Goal? Wayne's gaze moved again. He looked at Burnett and Det. What did he do? Burnett hesitated for a second. He only asked for our names. Name, huh? Wayne said as he took a step forward. At that moment, he was fully prepared. Under the cape, there were more than 10 equipment that could help him subdue the man before him. Even without the equipment, he was one of the best fighting masters in the world. In a one-on-one fight, at least in terms of technique, he would not be at a disadvantage. Speaking of which, I seem to have forgotten something very important. He walked directly toward Brother Jew. Jack is not your real name, right? He paused. What is your name? Brother Jew nodded. What is your name? Fong Bujue did not respond. When Wayne started walking, Brother Jew had already turned around and started running. His target was obvious. It was the opening he had opened with his gun. In terms of speed, Wayne was comparable to a world champion sprinter. However, Fong Bujue's speed was beyond the limits of ordinary people, so he had to be faster. In the blink of an eye, Brother Jew ran past the mayor and the two bodyguards. He was so fast that the two bodyguards had no time to react. At the same time, two bat darts flew out from Wayne's hands. They drew two arcs, bypassing Burnett and the other bodyguards, and went straight for Fong Bujue's back. I'll be waiting for you there, Batman. Just as Brother Jew shouted that, he turned around and leaped out of the building. When he turned around, he used only one hand to catch the two bat darts that were flying at him. With his other hand, he took out something from his bosom, a flashlight. In a few tenths of a second before gravity pulled him down, Fong Bujue switched on the flashlight and tossed it into the building through the hole that he had jumped out from. Then he fell. Ha! Ha! Ha ha! His body was falling, but his maniacal laughter was rising. His figure quickly disappeared into the night, but his laughter echoed in the building and didn't dissipate for a long time. Chapter 1419. Water. This was a place with water. It was built by the river and was located in a remote area. The rusty Ferris wheel, the creaking animal rocking chairs, and the numerous abandoned amusement facilities all indicated that this place had been abandoned for many years. On the side of the overgrown road, a wooden advertising board stood alone in the wind. On the board, there was an old poster. The Boros Brothers Circus Troupe is performing here. Perhaps not many people still remembered this name, but many years ago, this troupe was quite famous. Gotham was one of the stops on their tour. The mayor at the time specially allocated funds to build this carnival in the suburbs to welcome them. Things had changed with the passage of time. Now, the Boros brothers were nowhere to be found, and the venue of the carnival had also become a broken place where even tramps wouldn't stop. But tonight there was a guest. Creak, creak. The man in a purple long suit sat on a broken animal rocking chair. He rocked the chair like a child, looking like he had nothing to do. I know you're here. At some point, Fong Bujue suddenly looked up at the sky and said to himself, You're watching, listening, and waiting. He paused. I've been sitting here for 15 minutes and doing nothing, but I still haven't been judged as AF King. This can only be explained by, you've interfered with the judgment system of fate. After he said that, there was about 5 seconds of silence. Then, another voice spoke. How do you know it's me? This was a gentle male voice, but the tone sounded cold and numb. Elimination method. I listed out the people who have the ability to manipulate the timeline and have the ability to interfere with fate, and then I tried to figure out who had the highest possibility. The conclusion was that characters who were lower level than you would not be able to do something like that, and characters who were higher level than you would not be able to do something like that. So, after giving it some thought, I came to the conclusion that it could only be you. After that, Fong Bujue turned his head and looked at the man who suddenly appeared not far away from him. That was a blue humanoid creature. Its entire body was glowing like a blue glow stick. He was very tall, at least a head taller than Fong Bujue. Putting aside his unusual skin color, he was generally a naked, hairless middle-aged man. In the setting of the DC universe, there were many beings worthy of being called gods, and he was one of them, and a very powerful one at that. People called him Dr. Manhattan. I'm guessing you want to make a deal with me now, Dr. Manhattan said after 2 seconds. You, who can predict the future? Do you still need to guess? Fong Bujue continued. Yes, Dr. Manhattan replied. Because you are not within the range of my observation. Then what about Bruce Wayne? Fong Bujua asked, or the guy who is probably Bruce Wayne. Can you see his future clearly? You already know the answer. Why ask when you already know the answer? Dr. Manhattan replied. Oh, Brother Jew laughed. He lifted his leg and turned his body sideways. He flipped down from the pink elephant, the animal rocking chair he was sitting on. Yes, if you can see it clearly, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. You seem a little dissatisfied. Why? Dr. Manhattan had telepathy. Even if Fong Bujue was smiling on the surface, he could see his true emotions. Because the hint you gave me was a little too obvious, and it made me feel a little bored. Fong Bujue continued. You can keep your thoughts to yourself, and I'm very happy to help you solve the confusion in your heart. When you find out the truth, you'll naturally get an answer, a traveler from another world. The next second, he repeated the last paragraph of the introduction word for word. Then he paused for half a second and said, the traveler from another world at the end of your paragraph seems to be a form of address for me. But in fact, it's the answer itself. You've told me the truth from the beginning. The reason for the various abnormalities in this world is traveler from another world. Isn't it good to tell you? Dr. Manhattan asked again. Oh, Fong Bujue said, I don't want to answer this question. After all, you don't know me, so I can't say that you're wrong. Dr. Manhattan muttered. During this process, he tried to analyze Brother Jew's psychology. I really didn't expect you to be such a dangerous person. You should be glad that I'm not like that, Wayne. I won't stay here for long, Fong Bujue said. Yes, I'm glad. Dr. Manhattan nodded slightly. If the person who came back then was you, I'm afraid this world would have been turned upside down. All right, I don't have time to imagine the unfolding of a non-existent timeline with you. Let's talk about the deal. Fong Bujue changed the topic. Hearing this, Dr. Manhattan's expression did not change. He only paused for a moment before continuing. A long time ago, I made a deal with him as well. That was when he first came here. That year, Bruce Wayne was 9 years old. On the night of the first anniversary of his parents' death, he swallowed half a bottle of sleeping pills in grief and ended his life. The cause of everything happened at that time. A minute after Bruce's vital signs disappeared, a consciousness from another world entered his body and revived him. That consciousness was the Batman who fought with you twice today. When this unforeseeable special individual was born in this timeline, I immediately went to him and negotiated with him. He claimed that he came from a higher dimension than me. Over there, all the multiverse in my dimension, all the people, things, and things in it were just imaginary product for people to entertain. He listed several different futures in detail, and I did observe the universes that were exactly the same as what he described. Besides, he knew me quite well and could tell many secrets about me that were never known to outsiders. As an observer, I naturally wouldn't choose to kill such an existence, because he is unique and has great reference value. His appearance has changed the direction of this universe's reality. No matter what kind of future this universe leads to, it will be an excellent specimen for me. So, I made a deal with him. I gave him the abilities that Bruce Wayne should have: astonishing intelligence, stamina, and so on. I also eliminated all the people who could become a threat in his eyes, such as the Kryptonians who were known as superhumans in other multiverses, and other alien civilizations in this universe that might have crossed paths with Earth. He promised that he would do better than the real Bruce Wayne. At this point, Dr. Manhattan paused for a moment before shaking his head. Actually, I don't care whether he will do better or worse. I just want to see what he will do and how he will do it. So, in other words, you have seen enough? Fong Bujue went along with the flow. I've seen enough, Dr. Manhattan replied. What I need now is change, but I can't predict what kind of effect it would have on my own quantum flow and all the multiverses in this dimension if I, or a certain me, Dr. Manhattan, could make countless copies of himself, each with their own thoughts and abilities similar to the original, directly interfere with him on the material or immaterial level. So, Brother Jew continued, you want me to kill Batman for you? Dr. Manhattan nodded and said, that's all I want and need. Tell me about yours. Ha! Well, Fong Bujue curled one corner of his lips, and a wicked smile appeared on his face. My request is definitely simpler than that of Mr. Transmigrator. It can be easily realized. Chapter 1420. Once upon a time, a man in a long purple suit told a joke to a man who was dressed as a bat. The joke went like this. Once upon a time, there were two people in a mental hospital. One night, they decided to escape from the mental hospital together. They climbed up to the roof. The scenery of the city stretched out under the moonlight. The road before them led to the world of freedom. However, in front of them, there was a narrow gap between the two buildings. The first person easily jumped over the gap. However, his friend did not dare to jump because he was afraid that he would fall. So, the first person came up with an idea. He said to his friend, "Hey, I have a flashlight. When I turn it on, I will shine it between the two buildings. Then you can step on the light and come over." However, the second person shook his head and said, "What? Do you take me for a lunatic? You will definitely turn off the flashlight when I am halfway through." Under the hazy moonlight, the Batmobile sped down the street. Inside the Batmobile, Wayne, we still have to call him that for the time being, had a solemn expression on his face. His destination was undoubtedly the carnival that had been abandoned for many years. For someone with the same reasoning ability as the real Bruce Wayne, solving Fong Bujue's riddle was not too difficult. The flashlight that Brother Jew left him was like a key. As for the lock corresponding to this key, as early as this afternoon, Fong Bujue had left it in Arkham Asylum. Water, where there is water, huge wheels, wooden boards, weeds, and pink elephants. This was what Fong Bujue said when he was talking to Dr. Quinn. Without a doubt, it had been recorded word for word by the recorder pen. At first glance, it sounded like the ravings of a mental patient. However, Fong Bujue was using the fragments of information related to the visual image to point to a specific location. This location, or rather, this image he had once seen in a comic. That comic was one of the most famous and classic stories in the Batman series, Deadly Joke. Quite a lot of the story, including its final climax, took place in the abandoned carnival. Anyone who had a certain level of understanding of Batman comics would have an impression of that location. Needless to say, Wayne, who had the ability to prevent many villains from becoming evil, would definitely know where the carnival was. Of course, there were thousands of Batman stories. Such a seemingly random description was probably too vague. Therefore, Fong Bujue used another item related to Deadly Joke, the flashlight, to show Wayne the way. When they met for the second time on the top floor of the twin building, Fong Bujue and Wayne obviously knew that each other was a traveler from another world. From their conversation, the difference was that Wayne had figured it out in the submarine, while Brother Jew had figured it out much earlier. Therefore, Fong Bujue had prepared the flashlight in advance and said, "I will wait for you there," when he tossed it out. At this point, Brother Jew's plan had been completed. As for Wayne, after he returned to the Batcave, he immediately took the flashlight to the instrument for a comprehensive analysis. At the same time, he retrieved Arkham's video and audio recordings and quickly browsed through them. About 40 minutes later, he heard Brother Jew's words. Combining the clues from the flashlight, it didn't take him too long to figure out where there was. Virum, on the suburban road, the sound of an engine tore through the night sky. The Wayne in this universe was not driving the real, armored Batmobile like the one in Nolan's movie. Instead, he was driving a super Batmobile like Tim Burton's. The streamlined body of the Batmobile had a dark, reflective outer shell and an exaggerated turbine intake. All of these were integrated into one under the uniform Gothic design style. This was the appearance that a classic Batmobile should have. Click. Virum. Just as the Batmobile was about to reach the entrance of the carnival, suddenly, the sound of large equipment being powered up rang out. Dozens of strong light beams lit up in the dark and focused on the center of the road. At this moment, a man in a long purple suit was standing in the middle of the road. Through the display in the car, Wayne could see the man's full appearance without being affected by the light. Jack looked no different from before. The only slight difference was that his hands were now wearing gloves. Wayne didn't know what this meant, and he didn't care about such details. Within 2 seconds, he made a decision. He stepped on the gas pedal to its limit and sped towards the other party. Facing the Batmobile that was speeding toward him, a smile appeared on Feng Bujue's face. Perfect timing. He opened his arms and yelled, "Come on!" The roar of the engine was approaching, and there was no sign of slowing down. "Come on, hit me!" Feng Bujue was still standing in the middle of the road, standing in the center of the lights, and he had no intention of retreating. Madman, seeing Brother Ju's action, Wayne, who was inside the car, could not help but give this comment to himself. Bang! 2 seconds later, the collision happened. Wayne did speculate that Feng Bujue had superpowers, but he didn't think that the man's ability was strong enough to withstand the impact. A Batmobile that weighed more than 2 tons and was traveling at more than 200 kilometers per hour would generate about 3.09 million joules of energy. For a human being like Feng Bujue, who weighed about 50 kilograms, this amount of energy was more than enough to vaporize him. However, when the collision happened, the scene was the moment the front of the Batmobile was about to hit Brother Ju, he lifted his foot and stopped the entire car. At that moment, with Brother Ju's feet as the center, the ground around him crumbled and formed a large crater. The Batmobile that was stopped started to change under the influence of inertia. The whole vehicle started to crumple like a can that was being squeezed. However, the material of the Batmobile was amazing. Its hardness and toughness were far beyond the limits of human technology. Under such an impact, the body of the Batmobile still didn't completely fall apart. It was only compressed to a certain extent. Clang! Then, the removable hatch at the upper rear of the Batmobile. The 1989 version of the Batmobile used the hatch that was integrated with the windshield to enter and exit the vehicle, was sent flying. It wasn't sent flying by some kind of ejector, but by a punch from the person in the car. Feng Bujue looked at the man who slowly stood up from the almost flattened cabin. He was unharmed and said in a lazy tone, "So he's not dead yet." Wayne stepped on the car as he walked out of the cabin. He lowered his head to look at Brother Ju in front of him and used his voice that sounded like someone with terminal throat cancer to say, "I should be the one saying that." Of course, Feng Bujue wouldn't die. He had made a deal with Dr. Manhattan. With the doctor's ability to control particles, decompose and reassemble, and ignore the law of causality, coupled with the Kong Tong seal and the energy stored in the Heaven Spirit's Earth Fiend's box, Brother Ju had recovered his lost equipment and skills. And he had become stronger. Wayne wouldn't die either, even though he suffered a similar impact as Feng Bujue outside the car. He was well prepared tonight. This level of injury was nothing. The armor you're wearing looks like the Hellbat armor. It appeared in the New 52 era of DC. It was designed by Bruce Wayne and built by other members of the Justice League. Even though Wayne didn't answer Brother Ju's question, Brother Ju continued, "But you and I both know that the Justice League of this universe doesn't have Superman or Green Lantern. In other words, the two most important parts of this armor, the outer shell and the cape, extremely strong and can change shape according to the users will like Green Lantern's creation. It can even be separated from the body, can't be completed." He paused. "Even if you can use a substitute to solve the material problem, it still can't explain how you survived the shocking car accident just now." So there are things you can't think of." Wayne snorted and swung his fist. His punch was so powerful that when Feng Bujue caught it with one hand, the air around them exploded with a loud boom. "Actually, I thought of it. I'm just complaining." Brother Ju looked at the confused Wayne with a smile and replied, "You've gotten your hands on the formula for Miraclo, a special kind of biochemical phosphor. It can give the user super strength, stamina, speed, resistance, night vision, and underwater survival abilities within an hour. Right? You?" Wayne turned his head and looked at his fist that was firmly held by the other party. He didn't know what to say. Before Wayne came here, he had injected himself with Miraclo, and he was now wearing his own modified Hellbat armor. Logically speaking, his punch was likely to kill the other party. However, Feng Bujue seemed to have caught the punch with ease. "I guess your expression right now must be very interesting," Feng Bujue said. He reached out his other hand with lightning speed, grabbed the other party's helmet, and tore off half of it with brute force. "Why don't you share it with me?" After part of the helmet was broken, the other half quickly fell off Wayne's face. Then, a shocked face mixed with anger appeared in front of Brother Jew. "Even if you have the same IQ as Bruce Wayne, your wisdom is still only average." Fong Bujue waved his hand to shake off the broken pieces of the helmet that were stuck between his fingers. "Like most time travelers, even though you have gained great power, you still have not been able to jump out of the limitations of your own worldview and personality." His tone gradually became indifferent. It was a kind of indifference similar to disappointment. It was like a child who had lost interest in the toy in his hand. At this moment, it was chilling to hear. "Why did you make the hell bat armor? Why can't you design it yourself from scratch? You have far more resources and information than the real Wayne, don't you think?" Fong Bujue asked. "If you use the technology of mass-producing inatron alloy on a weapon level, whether it's used as an armor coating or a separate armor with it as the core, it will be more useful than this castrated version of the Hellbat armor you're wearing now." Wayne was completely enraged by Brother Jew's preaching. He roared and activated the secret weapon in his right wrist armor. In an instant, a silent impact burst out and shattered the armor of Wayne's entire right arm. In return, it also caused damage to Fong Bujue, who was holding on to Wayne's right fist. After the explosion, Brother Jew's left hand, the part in front of his elbow, seemed to have evaporated. If he hadn't let go and retreated in time, the damage would have extended all the way to his shoulder. Is this the part of your original work?" As Fong Bujue spoke, he didn't even think about it. He took out the Forest of Flowers ore from his backpack and activated its ability to repair his broken arm. "This atomic blast that damages the enemy 1,000 but damages the user 800 is really not clever. What do you know?" Wayne shouted. "What right do you have to judge me?" As he roared, he walked down from the wrecked Batmobile. "What I did was the right thing, the righteous thing. Do you know how much effort I put in to create and maintain today's situation?" "I know," Fong Bujue said. "I've already asked Dr. Manhattan to convey your experience here to me telepathically." He paused for half a second and added, "And because I know, I despise you even more." "What did you say?" Wayne's expression showed that he found it unbelievable. "Your righteousness is fake. It's a double standard." Fong Bujue continued. "The real Bruce Wayne will never walk the same path as you, even if he has the same information as you." "Are you referring to his don't kill principle?" Wayne said. "You and I both know how stupid that principle is." "Yes, it's stupid," Fong Bujue said, "but this stupidity is exactly the dividing line in his heart. It is this line that separates the righteousness he carries out from your lowly, selfish, and hypocritical righteousness." "Nonsense!" Wayne shouted angrily again. In a flash, he came to Brother Jew's side and punched again. Fong Bujue didn't even look at his opponent. He stepped back and somersaulted, easily dodging the attack. Before he stood still, he continued, "In order to strangle the villains who might become a threat in the future in the cradle, long before you became Batman, you began to act. And the first thing you did was to kill those who bullied the Scarecrow back then. Those guys were a bunch of bastards." Wayne retorted, but his attacks didn't stop. "Ha! It sounds like you empathize with them. I can imagine, before you transmigrated, your life wasn't easy either." Fong Bujue's ability to see through people's minds was indeed amazing. His words undoubtedly poked at the fake Wayne's sore spot. "You killed and injured so many innocent police officers. What right do you have to criticize me?" Wayne retorted, launching another round of attacks. "You saved Mr. Freeze's wife because you sympathized with him. You stopped Two-Face from being disfigured because you admired him. You even led Penguin to the righteous path because you believed in him. You believed in him because you believed in him. You even led Penguin to the righteous path because you believe in his value as a good person. But for Killer Croc, who was just as tragic, you did something different. You found Killer Croc when he was a teenager and claimed that you would protect him. You also arranged a suitable hiding place for him. At first, he was very obedient because Killer Croc was very afraid of the changes in his body. But as time passed, he gradually couldn't stand the kind of life anymore. At that time, you wanted to kill him because you knew that after he returned to society, even if you could temporarily make him become a good person, this malicious world would one day force out his beast nature. So, one day, you sent him a specially made bed. After he laid down on it, you shackled him. Then, you sealed the entrance to his place and left him to fend for himself. As if that way, you didn't have to be responsible for his death. What do you know? Do you know how painful it was for me? Wayne roared. I really did treat Wayne. Killer Croc's real name was Wayne Jones. As a friend, do you think it was easy for me to lock him up there? Yes, you were upset for a while, and then you continued to live your good life. Hearing Wayne's agitated tone, the disdain in Brother Jew's words became even more obvious. After you dealt with Killer Croc, you calculated that your days were almost up, so you went to kill the botanist Jason Wood and prevented the birth of poison ivy. Of course, according to your standards, even school bullies deserve to die, not to mention people like Wood. Then, you made the Riddler into a retard because there was no reason for him to become evil, and it was very difficult to stop him. His intelligence was a huge threat to you. As for people like Zaz, you could just throw him into a high-security prison. Maybe time would make him turn over a new leaf, right? Ha! Even if he really didn't change and insisted on doing evil after he was released, he wasn't a difficult person to deal with. You just had to catch him one more time and lock him up for more than 10 years. Then it would be over. When Wayne heard this, he didn't argue anymore. Instead, he asked, so what? I have eliminated the hidden dangers that would have brought countless deaths and disasters. Also, I have reduced the sacrifice to the minimum. Compared to the so-called hero who indulges the villains to do evil and never kills anyone, I have saved more people. This is where your problem lies. Feng Bujue continued. No matter how high-sounding you make it sound, in the end, the one who really made the sacrifice is someone else. These words caused Wayne's heart to tremble, and his expression changed subtly. Look, if I didn't remind you, you wouldn't have realized this, right? This is a typical transmigrator's thinking. Feng Bujue said, a person who upholds extreme egoism under double standards sees everything he does as righteous. Your own pain, for example, losing a so-called friend, is infinitely magnified by you, as if it was so great that it moved you to tears. But other people's pain, for example, becoming brain damaged or dying, is reasonable in your eyes. Your so-called justice is just acting on the premise that you think it's convenient. If it's easy to deal with, you'll deal with it in an orderly way. If it's difficult to deal with someone or something that you think is troublesome, you'll deal with it once and for all by crossing the line. After that, you'll attribute it to reasonable sacrifices that bring more benefits than harm. At the end of the day, your personal gains and losses are greater than justice itself. Your personal will is greater than all other systems. No matter how many reasons you find to persuade me, no matter how many things you think are right, compared to the real Bruce Wayne, you are worthless, because he is a person who is more ruthless to himself than to others. He is a lunatic, an incurable fool. He is King, Batman. As he spoke, Feng Bujue's tone gradually became louder. At the same time, fake Wayne stopped attacking and realized something belatedly. At this moment, his abilities were being extracted by some strange force bit by bit. He was gradually becoming immortal. Leaving aside your identity as Batman, what about your private life as Bruce Wayne? And Feng Bujue was far from done. Why did you marry Harleen Quinzel and let her use the name Harleen Quinn after marriage? In the end, it's nothing more than your personal preference. Compared to Catwoman, who is a bitch from the East Side, in the setting of Batman. The first year, Catwoman is a prostitute at the bottom of Gotham. Quinzel, a psychology professor with a clean background and a high education, is naturally more suitable as a wife. Of course, that's if she doesn't become a brain-damaged fan of some lunatic. Brother Jew spread his hands and said with a smile, speaking of which, with your help, that lunatic has now become a middle-class comedian who's living a decent life, right? His child seems to be in high school soon. Brother Jew had already learned this information from Dr. Manhattan, and Mudman is still working as a B-movie star. Ventriloquist is living a comfortable retirement. As for those Robins, Batwoman, and Alfred, they've all stayed away from Bruce Wayne and Batman under your arrangements. They're all living ordinary lives. Fong Bujua pursed his lips and sighed. Sigh. You've basically achieved the few basic pursuits of transmigrators: absolute safety, a high degree of privacy and freedom, abundant material enjoyment, a woman they like, and a few weak or mentally retarded opponents to satisfy their sense of accomplishment as a hero. It's a pretty good life, isn't it? At this point, he changed the topic. Then here's the question: what the F***CK does this have to do with justice? Do you think you're more correct than that so-called hero who indulges the villains to do evil everywhere and never kills anyone? Then you're wrong, you and him, the fake Wayne and the real Batman. There's a fundamental difference between your justice. This difference has nothing to do with results. No matter how many people you save, it doesn't change or explain anything. This difference is related to the most basic starting point for your actions. It's related to the true meaning and spirit of the word hero. This difference is the actions you take in the name of justice are ultimately for yourself. As for Bruce Wayne, the real Batman, although his justice isn't completely, at least most of it is for others. When Brother Jew finished speaking, the power in the fake Wayne had mostly dissipated. What do you want? At this moment, the fake Wayne's tone changed. There was fear in his eyes because he could vaguely sense Brother Jew's intention. Humph. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Brother Jew smiled evilly. He didn't answer the question. Instead, he tilted his head and spread his arms. My appearance reminds you of someone, doesn't it? No. No. In his panic, the fake Wayne finally revealed his true nature. He actually turned around and tried to escape. At this moment, he was no longer the Dark Knight of Gotham, but a normal transmigrator. Even if he had a strong physique and extremely high intelligence, even if he had a full set of Batsuit equipment and many advanced technologies from the DC universe, he couldn't bear the title of Batman. Thud! After running a few steps, the fake Wayne fell to the ground. The reason was simple. With his power taken away, he didn't even have the ability to move normally in the fake Hellbat armor. Don't worry, taking back your power is just the beginning. Fong Bujua looked at the fake Wayne, who was on the verge of breaking down on the ground. He approached him step by step, and with a crazed expression, he continued with a sinister smile. In the next few years, John, Dr. Manhattan's real name, will slowly correct your influence on this world. Your wife, Harley Quinn, will go crazy because of your disappearance. The Scarecrow's repressed dark side will finally awaken. Two-Faced Man will be disfigured in another violent incident. Mr. Freeze's wife will fall ill again, and this time there will be no cure. On the other hand, the Riddler's illness will heal itself without any medicine. No, no, no. The fake Wayne's pupils contracted, and his face turned pale. He fell to the ground and couldn't even move. He could only let out a desperate cry. However, Brother Jew wouldn't stop there. Somewhere in this world, there will be another unfortunate person who will contract an atavistic disease similar to killer crocodile. There will also be another unscrupulous botanist who will develop a poison that mutates poison ivy. Some Kryptonian, Green Lantern Corps, and other alien forces will come to Earth one after another in some form. These are all just a matter of time. There's nothing that can't be fixed and reshaped. Of course, a new Batman is bound to descend here as well. He may come from the future or the past. He may also be a person who died in some incident and came back to life. What's important is that he will be the real Bruce Wayne. Fong Bujua paused for a moment before saying, in short, there's no need for a fake Wayne here. Everything you've done is meaningless. Just as Brother Jew finished speaking, a new change happened to the fake Wayne on the ground. Ugh, ugh. In the midst of his wailing, his deathly pale face became truly white as bleach, and his sturdy and well-built body also rapidly thinned. Fong Bujua knew that these changes were caused by the effects of Miraclo, and the Hellbat armor. The variant of Miraclo, the miraculous serum, the serum used by villains such as Death Knell and Red Arrow, had the side effect of making people irritable, and even having a distorted personality. As for the Hellbat armor, its power source was the user's life. Those who wore it for a long time would have their bodies corroded. Now that Dr. Manhattan had taken back his power, the double side effect caused the fake Wayne's body and spirit to suddenly become weak. It was difficult for him to bear the burden. Ka! Brother Jew did not just stand by and watch. He strode to the fake Wayne and tore off a few pieces of the armor with his bare hands. Then he pulled the fake Wayne out of the armor and threw him to the ground. Don't be afraid. I won't kill you. Then, Fong Bujue rode on the fake Wayne. Now he only needed to use his weight to suppress the fake Wayne. I only have a simple, small request. He took out a small knife from his pocket and waved it in front of the fake Wayne's terrified face. He said in a deranged tone, "Previously, you asked for my name, but I didn't answer you because I thought. You actually know the answer." At that moment, the fake Wayne's mind and body were on the verge of collapse. The last straw that supported his rationality was his instinctive will to live. "Come on, say my name." Fong Bujue's knife was already on the fake Wayne's face. Joker. The fake Wayne squeezed out the word with shaking hands. Ha. When the word was uttered, Fong Bujue raised his head to the sky and started to laugh maniacally. Current quest completed. All main quests have been completed. You have completed the scenario. Automatic teleportation in 180 seconds. The expected system announcement came, but Brother Jew was not done yet. He still had one last step to complete his hidden quest. After laughing for a full minute, Brother Jew lowered his head to look at the fake Wayne. "Don't look so sad. Come, smile as well." Then, the knife in his hand reached into the fake Wayne's mouth. He slowly left 2 cuts on the fake Wayne's lips, or rather, he left a permanent smiley face on the fake Wayne's face. In the first few seconds of this process, fake Wayne was still crying out in pain, but his cries didn't last long, because in that instant his spirit and mind had finally and completely collapsed. When the knife left the fake Wayne's pale face, he smiled from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 14:21. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the end of the year, and the atmosphere on the streets was getting stronger. During the coldest time of the year, it was normal for friends to invite you out for hot pot. However, that night, Fong Bujue, who was invited to a private room in a restaurant by Xiao Tan, felt that something was amiss. Gurgle. There were 3 people in the private room, but no one spoke. The only sound that could be heard was the boiling of the hot pot soup. It seems that I have to speak first. In the end, it was Fong Bujue who broke the silence. "Why are you so serious?" Bao Qing turned to look at him and asked, "You didn't bring any money. You don't have to act anymore." Fong Bujue's tone was still serious. I could tell the moment I walked in. "This is a trap. Brother Bujue." Xiao Tan's mouth twitched, and he continued, "This meal is really not expensive, and the room fee is not bad. Besides, I was planning to treat you to this meal anyway." "Humph." Hearing that, Fong Bujue scoffed. Xiao Tan, Master Bao. His eyes scanned the two separately. "Your various habits, little actions, and subconscious micro-expressions. I know them better than anyone else." He ignored the conversation between the two about the money and continued on his own. "Since I walked in, the 2 of you have spoken less than 10 sentences in total, and you have exchanged glances less than 3 times. Xiao Tan, who rarely crosses his legs, crossed his legs twice and even played with his fingers 3 times. And Master Bao, as someone who places great importance on table etiquette, lowered his head to look at his phone 5 times. Fong Bujue was surprised. He finished all of this in one breath, then looked at the 2 people who were confused and asked in a low voice, "Both of you received orders from Section Chief Gu to arrest me, right?" "No." Bao Qing answered very decisively. "Oh." Fong Bujue raised his eyebrows. "Are you here to kill me?" Bao Qing laughed dryly again. "I can't kill you. You've also practiced the heavenly book of Dunjia and have special abilities. I can't kill you alone without any equipment. Isn't there still Xiao Tan? Feng Bujue glanced at Xiao Tan. I've heard that your family has been practicing immortal cultivation for generations, right? Xiao Tan did not know how to reply. Actually, so he decided to avoid this ridiculous question and went straight to the point. I invited all of you here today to send out the wedding invitations. As he spoke, he took out a red envelope from his pocket and placed it in front of Brother Ju. As Master Bao arrived earlier than you, and he has something to do later, I've already given him his letter. Silence descended once more. After a brief exchange, Feng Bujue's reasoning was refuted. He did not speak for a long time, and the atmosphere became a little awkward. It was just like the lyrics of the song. What scares people the most is silence. After a while, Brother Ju's serious tone returned to his usual lazy state. Then, why didn't you talk much after I came in? Bao Qing replied calmly. You're a person who arrived half an hour late without informing us. What do you want to hear when you come in? Do you want us to say, it's fine, we just arrived? Then why do you keep looking at your phone? Brother Ju asked again. Didn't Xiao Tan say that I have something to do later? I have something to do later, Bao Qing replied. Something to do with work? Feng Bujue asked. No comment, Bao Qing said without thinking. Oh, then it's work. Brother Ju nodded and then looked at Xiao Tan. Hey, then why do you look so uneasy, as if you have something to hide? Xiao Tan thought for a while. On one hand, it's because you didn't talk to us just now, and the atmosphere was very tense. I thought you had something on your mind, so I didn't say anything. On the other hand, he stood up. Actually, I've been eating too much hot pot for the past 2 days, and my stomach is hurting. Since there's nothing to do now, I'll go to the bathroom first. After saying that, he clutched his stomach and ran out like a wisp of smoke. Damn, you can't not eat when you have a stomachache. Feng Bujue rolled his eyes and shouted at Xiao Tan's back. In the end, it wasn't that he had something to hide, but that he had sh*T in his stomach. There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Bao Qing looked down at his phone and complained, the first kind is the people who like eating tacos, but once they eat them, they get bloody stool, so they don't eat them anymore. The second kind is the people who eat tacos and get bloody stool, so they keep buying new underwear. Feng Bujue carefully understood the meaning of his words. Although I think it's more appropriate to use masturbation as an example, you're missing the point, right? Bao Qing put down his phone and interrupted Brother Ju. Is this your reaction after seeing the wedding invitation? Our buddies are about to get married, and all you care about is the example I used to complain? You said about to is a bit inaccurate. Feng Bujue said, technically, he's already married. According to the Civil Affairs Bureau's records, he and Xiao Ling have already registered. Bao Qing was dumbfounded. How did you know? After 2 seconds, he seemed to have thought of something. Xiao Tan told you? Hey, but he didn't tell me. No. Except for him and Xiao Ling, as well as their families, he didn't tell anyone. Feng Bujue said, I found out myself. He spread his hands. You know me. I like to look through the database of government agencies as a pastime. But since last year, Chief Gu has strictly forbidden me from wandering around the public security, procuratorial, and legal systems. I have no choice. I can only shift my target to the Civil Affairs Bureau and those semi-bureaucratic organizations. By the way, do you want to hear a few toilet jokes about the Chinese Football Association and the Writers Association? I've been inspired recently, and I've written dozens of jokes while I'm taking a dump. I'm thinking of using my sock puppet account to submit them online to earn some extra money. Why don't you be my listener and try the joke? I'll pretend I didn't hear the last part of your sentence. Bao Qing narrowed his eyes. The point is, you already knew that Xiao Tan and Xiao Ling have already registered, but you didn't tell me? Respect his privacy. Wouldn't it be better to let him tell us himself? Feng Bujue replied without batting an eyelid. Right now, you're the epitome of shameless with your words and actions. Do you know that? Bao Qing said. I'm very respectful of her privacy. Feng Bujue shrugged. You see, before he took out the wedding invitation, did I say a word about his marriage? Bao Qing listened and thought for a long time. For the time being, He couldn't think of a way to refute Zhao Yu's words. But then again, you two really gave me a fright just now, Feng Bujua said. I really thought Section Chief Gu sent the two of you to deal with me. As he spoke, he took out his phone and stood up. Anyway, as long as you're fine, I'm going out to make a call. Huh? Bao Qing looked back at him. There's only the two of us here. What kind of call are you going out to make? It's nothing. I thought I was ambushed, so when you weren't paying attention, I put my hand in my pocket and blindly sent some messages, informed some people, and arranged some backup plans. Feng Bujua said as he walked. Since everything is fine now, I'd better cancel those plans as soon as possible. Of course, they have to hear my voice first. Okay, that's enough. Bao Qing held her forehead and shook her head, interrupting Brother Zhu again. Pretend I didn't ask. In fact, Bao Qing had experienced something similar once before. That was when the three of them were in high school. One day, there was a guy from a powerful family who had a conflict with Feng Bujua. He wanted to challenge Feng Bujua to a one-on-one fight. Brother Zhu thought that the guy would set up an ambush, but he didn't expect the guy to come alone. After the fight, he accepted the challenge without any complaints. At that time, Bao Qing and Xiao Tan, who were hiding in the dark as a backup plan, heard Brother Zhu say to the guy, "How many people know that you're here today? And you'd better wait for me to make a few calls before you go home." After a while, when Bao Qing understood the meaning of those two sentences, she was also scared. No one knew how many backup plans Feng Bujua had, and no one knew what he would do and to what extent. But everyone had a consensus. If the end of the world suddenly came one day, and they needed to find someone with emergency response measures, he would be the best choice. Of course, they couldn't rule out the possibility that he would be used as emergency food. Hello. Brother Zhu didn't go too far. The soundproofing of the walls of the hotel was relatively good, so he picked up the phone directly in the corridor. Is this Snow? Ah, it's me. False alarm. Your people don't need to come over. You're so heartless. Snow's slightly joking voice came from the phone. Am I the kind of friend that you only contact when you need me? Don't say it like we have some kind of physical relationship. Feng Bujua said, just say that we're friends who make use of each other, or you can omit the word friend. I don't mind. Ha! Snow laughed. Okay, as long as you're happy. He paused. But since we're making use of each other, my men have made a wasted trip tonight, and they've spent a lot of manpower and money, 2 scripts. Feng Bujua knew what Snow was going to say, so he didn't talk nonsense with him and went straight to the point. 3. Snow immediately began to bargain. 2. Feng Bujua repeated firmly. Then they have to be in sleep mode, Snow said again. Deal. Brother Zhu set the terms and was ready to hang up. If there's nothing else, Snow raised his voice and said, right just now I saw a big piece of news on the game forum, and it's related to you. Oh, Feng Bujua said, what is it? This evening, Red Cherry Studio released an announcement on their official website, announcing that the super popular player Su Huaishang had terminated her contract with the studio half a month ago. When the news came out, the entire gaming circle was in an uproar. According to sources, in the contract of a superstar player of this level, there are very detailed provisions regarding the termination of the contract. The news of the termination of the contract can only be released by the studio after the termination of the contract has been dealt with by both parties. If the player announces the relevant information before the studio, even if the contract period is up, she will still bear the corresponding liability for breach of contract. And the longest termination process is usually 15 working days. It seems that the loss of a star has been a huge blow to Red Cherry, so they delayed the announcement until the last moment before releasing it to the public. Snow read the press release according to the original text. So what does this have to do with me? Feng Bujua replied calmly. Even though he looked calm on the surface, in reality, when he asked this question, Brother Zhu had a bad feeling in his heart. Snow had been waiting for this question. He smiled sinisterly and replied, our reporter interviewed the person involved, Su Huaishang, via online chat. When asked which studio she would be joining next, Su Huaishang said that due to the restriction of the non-compete clause, she would not be able to join any other game studio for the next 6 months. The reporter then asked if she would use this opportunity to enter the entertainment industry, and Su Huaishang said that she would not leave the gaming world, and even if she did, she would not enter the entertainment industry. Finally, when the reporter asked her about her plans for the next 6 months, she said that she was considering joining a powerful non-professional players guild. When asked which guild was her top priority, Su Huaishang's answer was Underworld Frontline. Chapter 1422. Even though before entering the login lobby, Feng Bujue was already mentally prepared. When he opened the inbox, he was still shocked. The last time I received so many emails was when I fought her during the Battle of the Butterfly at S1. Brother Ju looked at the number of emails and sighed helplessly. After so many updates, the social system of Thriller Paradise had naturally become richer and more complete. Correspondingly, some of the rules had changed as well. In the current version of the game, players were free to send and receive emails. However, the supervision of the system had become stricter. The system's ability to identify spam had improved by leaps and bounds compared to the early days of the game. It was almost as good as a real person reviewing emails. In addition to profanities, disgusting comments without profanities, spam composed of all kinds of gibberish and advertising emails. There were also some more complicated means such as acrostic poems, indirect abuse combined with examples of current events, specific graphics composed of various symbols, and so on. The system could screen and block all of them. Once a player sent an email like that, they would not be able to send another email for a long time. Other than that, even if they did not send an email that was deemed as harassment by the system, within a certain period of time, if a player did not receive a reply, they would not be able to send more than one email to the same target. In conclusion, the current anti-harassment system of the game was still quite effective. But even so, Brother Ju still received more than 10,000 messages. It was not hard to imagine that if not for the system, the number that would have been waiting for him would not have been 5 digits, but 7 digits. I'm very unhappy. You're a bad person. I hate you. Can you go and stop your heartbeat? Su Huaishang's personal bodyguard. The following sentences that might be censored are omitted. 100 million words. You are on your own. Feng Bujue quickly browsed through the emails, and most of the content made him speechless. Due to the existence of the system review, in order for the mail to be delivered, these people had to rack their brains to find words that would not be censored. The result was, in the end, the things that were sent over were extremely harmonious. It did not make people angry at all. In fact, it even felt a little cute. Ding! Brother Ju looked at it for 2 minutes before a notification came. It meant that he had a friend who wanted to talk to him. He glanced at the window, and sure enough, it was Su Huaishang. After thinking for 2 seconds, Feng Bujue clicked on audio only. Video could be used, but Brother Ju usually didn't do it because he didn't think it was necessary. After the connection was established, he spoke first. Hello. Hello. Su Huaishang replied. You're really good at ambushing us today, Brother Ju said in a teasing tone right after the greeting. Acting first and reporting later, right? Huh. Su Huaishang naturally knew what her Brother Ju was talking about. She was amused. You must be dealing with the threatening emails now, right? Yeah, these threatening emails are between kindergarten classes and kindergarten classes. They look like they are acting coquettishly. It's a nightmare, Feng Bujue complained. Just bear with it for a few days. It will lessen after a while. Su Huaishang said, unlike me, I'm harassed like this every day. Other than the threatening emails, there are love confessions, flirtations, and the most ridiculous thing is that there are people who confess to me about the bad things they've done. You are you, and I am me. Feng Bujue said, why don't you tell me that you don't have to wait in line when you go out? After he said that, Su Huaishang was obviously stunned for 2 seconds before she said, Hey, how do you know that I don't have to wait in line when I go out? Don't worry, I'm not a stalker. Feng Bujue knew that Su Huaishang had probably misunderstood him. I'm just speculating. The next second, Su Huaishang raised her voice. When I go to the cafe for a cup of coffee, everyone from the waitress to the manager says that I'm a lucky customer and I don't have to pay. That's not my problem, is it? When I go to the theme park, there are always people in front of the line who want to invite me to join them. That's not my problem either. Is it? I'm also troubled by that. That's none of my business. Fong Bujue said, go talk to your parents. Put on a mask and sunglasses before you go out. The two of them yelled at each other for a few seconds and then went silent for a few seconds. Then it was Su Huaishang who pulled the topic back. Okay, let's get down to business. Can I join your club? No. Fong Bujue answered without thinking. Why not? Su Huaishang asked. Our club is very low-key. Fong Bujue said. Huh? Hearing Su Huaishang's tone, she seemed to want to laugh, but she forced herself to hold it in. You know that you're more famous than all the players in many gaming studios combined, right? Furthermore, Underworld Frontline is the champion of S2. How can you be low-key? So, you want to increase our club's popularity by at least 2 times? Fong Bujue asked. I don't really care about that. Su Huaishang said. I only know that your club is very strong, and I think the atmosphere is very good. What else? Fong Bujue continued. Su Huaishang was taken aback. What else? There's one more important reason that you haven't told me, right? Fong Bujue said. Su Huaishang hesitated. After thinking about it, she felt like she couldn't hide this from Fong Bujue. So she said, okay, I think there's a high chance that I can win S3 if I join your club. Oh, that's right. Fong Bujue said proudly. If you want to ride my coattails, just say it. If you're honest from the start, maybe I'll consider it. So what's your decision now? Su Huaishang seemed to be getting impatient, so she followed up with another question. Still no. Fong Bujue's tone was rising. Why? Su Huaishang said word by word. Still no. Because our club is not only low-key, it's also very democratic. Fong Bujue replied. I don't have the right to decide whether or not you can join us. I have to ask the other members before I can give you an answer. As long as they all agree, then you'll agree? Su Huaishang asked. Yes. Fong Bujue said, but everyone in our club has to agree. There can't be a single veto. Your club only has 5 members, right? Su Huaishang asked. Yes, that's why every vote is important. Brother Ju said matter-of-factly. Think of our club as the United Nations Security Council. Every member has a veto. Even though I've never heard of our club having such a rule, but since you've said so, I hope you'll follow it in the future. At this time, another person's voice came from the communication channel. This person's tone was 90% similar to Brother Ju's, but the voice was much better than Brother Ju's. Huh? Brother Ju's first reaction was that he had misheard. What's going on? Ruoyu? Brother Ju. Actually, the 4 of us have been here since the beginning. Then, Xiao Tan's voice came from the other side. Where are you? Fong Bujue asked as he thought about it. In Sister Shang's conference room. Xiao Tan replied. You found yourself another big sister in such a short time? Fong Bujue almost instinctively complained. By the way, you're home fast, aren't you? Didn't you take a dump when you got home after eating hot pot? You came online earlier than I did. His voice was getting louder and louder because he realized that his conversation with Su Huaishang was under the scrutiny of his 4 Underworld Frontline teammates. Even though he didn't say anything out of line, it didn't feel good to be spied on without knowing it. Then, you should know the general situation now. A few seconds later, Su Huaishang's voice came back. If you don't have a problem with your vote, come to my conference room and add me leader. When Fong Bujue was invited into Su Huaishang's conference room, Ruoyu, Xiao Ling, Xiao Tan, and Miss and had been waiting for him for a long time. To Brother Ju's surprise, Goddess, Su had arranged her meeting room to be something like a training room. There was basically no entertainment. Other than the area around the meeting table, there was not even a place for one to sit comfortably in the room. So this is a conference room for professional players. It does have a lot to learn from. After Fong Bujue entered, he walked to the side of the room and sat down while looking around. Not all professional players would arrange things like this. Su Huaishang said, at least the studio I worked for before didn't have any requirements for players to do activities in the resting area. She paused and then continued. This is just my personal preference. because sometimes I have to wait in the conference room for a meeting. I feel like I have nothing better to do, so I might as well use that time to train. Obviously, Su Huaishang, who was called a genius by Meng Jingchan, was not only very talented in gaming, she was also a very hardworking player. In fact, she was probably the most hardworking professional player in the game right now. From the earliest days of esports with keyboards and mice to the future, where virtual reality games were becoming more and more popular, the discrimination against female players in the gaming circle had never stopped. With the passing of time, people's views had also changed. Even today, there are still many people who held the stereotype that female players are definitely weaker than male players. Whenever a female player was mentioned, their focus would first be on the player's appearance. Then, there would be some gossip that was either exaggerated or distorted. Admittedly, since the creation of video games, the overall strength of male players had always been overwhelmingly strong. This was even more so after the gaming industry became more professional. For a very long time, it was extremely rare for male players to lose to female players in a professional tournament. Occasionally, when a famous male player lost to a female player, he would be ridiculed until he retired from a game. Even after he retired, he would still be ridiculed. However, when it came to Feng Bujue and the others who relied on neural connection technology to play the game, the number of female players and the overall strength of the female players had increased significantly. This changed the situation a little bit. Su Huaishang, on the other hand, could be said to be a flag bearer of this era. She was the first female professional player to win multiple individual championships in international competitions regardless of gender. At least in the middle of the 21st century, this was an unprecedented achievement. Perhaps from an outsider's perspective, a girl like Su Huaishang only needed to rely on her face to live an easy life. But in reality, it was because of her appearance that her path to becoming a professional gamer was even more difficult. Without a doubt, even if Su Huaishang didn't want to, she would inevitably be treated differently in various situations. Therefore, when she first started playing the game, other than being harassed, she was also questioned by all kinds of people. More than once, she had been treated unfairly because she had refused some unreasonable requests. The glory that she earned through her hard work was also attributed by some people to relying on her appearance and connections. And there were many people who were willing to pay the price for these rumors. However, she still managed to survive. In the end, the game itself wouldn't lie. She used 10 times, or even 10 times more effort than others to finally gain the recognition of the players on the game's level. Finally, people moved their eyes away from her appearance and recognized that she was a professional player and one of the top players in the game. Only Su Huaishang could understand the hardships that she had endured along the way. Now, as a professional player, she didn't need to prove her strength anymore. But she still had one regret, and that was that she had yet to win the team championship honor. Therefore, this time, she joined the Underworld frontline. It was the same as betting on Feng Bujue and the others, of course. Feng Bujue didn't know about her experiences and thoughts. At the end of the day, Brother Ju didn't know Su Huaishang. But, as a woman, Ruo Yu's intuition in this regard was much more sensitive than Brother Ju's. When she saw the news about Su Huaishang's contract being terminated, she already had a vague idea of something. After that, after a series of probing, even though Su Huaishang was still tight-lipped, Ruo Yu understood that the trigger for the termination of Su Huaishang and Red Cherry's contract was the decision she made in the S2 match between Red Cherry and Underworld Frontline. After knowing this, Ruo Yu's heart was filled with an indescribable emotion. Speaking of which, the characters in your account and the resources, will they all belong to you after the termination? Feng Bujue didn't comment too much on Su Huaishang's personal preferences. He quickly asked a question that he was more interested in. Yes, they will all belong to me, Su Huaishang replied, but before the termination, the studio had already used various methods to reclaim the resources that could be reclaimed. To a large extent, it has hindered my ability to play the game normally. So, since the level cap was released, I haven't been able to level up much. Oh, Before she finished, Brother Jew had already figured out the few suspicious points that he couldn't figure out at Linlu Town. He mumbled to himself, "No wonder, Anyway, then, Feng Bujue scanned his companions. Since no one has any objections, I'll invite Goddess Su to join my group. How about you change the way you address me first?" Su Huaishang asked. When Feng Bujue heard this, a wicked smile appeared on his face. "If you dare to say that word that starts with 4. Now, Ruo Yu had reached the level where she could see through Brother Jew's trash talk before it even left his lips. Tomorrow morning, when we greet each other, there might be an uncontrollable physical altercation or something like that. Feng Bujue, who was exposed, swallowed the trash talk that was about to come out of his mouth. Then he turned to Su Huaishang and said, "Then why don't you tell me what to call you? You're older than me. Just call me Xiao Shang." Su Huaishang replied, "Then here's the problem," Feng Bujue said seriously. "In front of your die-hard fans, like your personal guards, should I come up with a different name? No need. No matter what you call them, their attitude towards you will still be death sentence or death sentence." Su Huaishang narrowed her eyes and complained. Brother Ju laughed. "Okay then." He called out the game menu and invited Su Huaishang to join his group. "Welcome to the big family of Underworld Frontline." He paused for half a second before adding, "Of course, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to lead you to the championship of S3. No." Before Su Huaishang could reply, Ruo Yu said in a firm tone, "You'll definitely get it." She looked at Su Huaishang. "It's not that we'll help you get it, it's that we'll all get it together. The championship of S3. Chapter 1423. After officially joining Underworld Frontline, Su Huaishang immediately updated her social media account. The next day, with the guidance of Feng Bujue, the great writer, she wrote a long article. She reflected on her journey as a professional gamer over the years, reviewed her achievements during her time as Red Sakura, and talked about her plans for the next half a year. The main point was that the team she was in now had a good atmosphere. She hoped that her fans would continue to support her and believe that she would be able to achieve good results even in a non-commercial environment. After this article was published, Goddess Su gained quite a number of fans. On the other hand, the other 5 members of Underworld Frontline, other than Brother Ju, started to receive various emails from strangers. However, the emails were not hostile. Most of them wanted to know about their guild. For example, how many members are there in your guild? Is Feng Bujue the only one in the guild? Is Su Huaishang having fun here? Is Underworld Frontline still recruiting? And many of them were purely sending messages to express their support for their idols. In conclusion, through that article, Brother Ju had successfully created a wave of public opinion. According to Miss Sin, as a writer, you have finally used your professional ability to do something good. On the 27th of January, before the news of Su Huaishang leaving the studio had died down, the Dream Company, as if unwilling to be left out, started to do something. That morning, 2 major announcements appeared on the official website of the Dream Company. The first one was shocking. The new year is coming. To ensure that all the players and the employees of the company have a happy new year, the Dream Company will have a 1-week holiday from midnight on New Year's Eve to 11:59 p.m. on the 6th of the new year. During the holiday, all the businesses under the company, including but not limited to Thriller Paradise, Crazy Thoughts, and the online marketplace, will be suspended. This was the umpteenth time that the Dream Company had done something like this. While other gaming companies and e-commerce companies were doing crazy promotions during the holidays, they actually wanted to take a break for an entire week. It was obvious that they didn't care about national holidays at all. It could be said that when they read this message, many jokers had already started to add sentences like, "I'm going to die if I don't get to play Thriller Paradise soon. How are the players going to celebrate the new year after you shut down the server? And God only needs 6 days to create the world, and you're going to give him 7 days off?" Naturally, these kinds of sentences came out of their mouths. However, they also knew that it was useless to say such things. Thriller Paradise had been open for almost a year already. How could the players not know about the Dream Company? Have you ever been to a gas station? Have you ever worked for a government agency? You've been through a lot, so this is nothing. At least when you're dealing with a Dream Company, you can get value from money most of the time. It's better than spending money and being a coward. No matter what, since the announcement had been made, the 7-day suspension was a done deal. The players only needed to complain, but if they wanted to cause trouble, they would not be able to change the result. In fact, they might even bring trouble to themselves. Zombie Blade, which had already closed down, was the best example. Then, there was the second announcement. The preliminary rules for Thriller Paradise's tournament for the Best S3 will be announced after the new year. This tournament will be a mixed solo and team competition. For more details, please pay attention to the official website. Even though this was an announcement that did not have much actual information and was more like a trailer for a movie, the reaction was much bigger than the previous one. Just the words mixed individual and team competition system were enough to make countless gaming studios unable to celebrate the new year in peace. 28th January, 2 a.m., inside Wang Tanji's conference room. Since Brother Bujue and Xiao Tan both came online late, they could only watch the movie while waiting for their teammates to come out from the scenario. You seem to be very busy recently. Other than the day of the hot pot, I haven't seen you in real life for days. Feng Bujue was still lying on the sofa in his favorite slump position as he chatted with Xiao Tan beside him. I don't want to talk about it. Xiao Tan looked exhausted. He dragged his voice and said, "This year's New Year's Eve falls on February 14th, 2056. It's Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve. Coincidentally, Xiao Ling and I are planning to get married this year, so we're just in time." After some discussion, the elders from both sides decided to have our wedding and New Year's Eve dinner together. He paused. I don't think I'll go into the significance of marriage and New Year's Eve for Chinese people. Putting these two things together is killing me. I quit my job about a month ago, and I've been accompanying Xiao Ling to take care of various things. But I still feel overwhelmed. Upon hearing this, Feng Bujue nodded. Think on the bright side. After the wedding, the two of you who have so much money that you can't spend it all will be able to eat, drink, and play all day long. About that. Upon hearing this, Xiao Tan looked sorrowful again. Recently, my psionic power has improved quite quickly. That father-in-law of mine, which is Section Chief Gu, seems to be preparing for me to go to Jioku to cultivate immortality. Feng Bujue laughed dryly. Then you've wasted your 5 years in medical university. That's what I said to him back then. Xiao Tan narrowed his eyes. He replied to me, "It's useless to study medicine. Your grandfather used to be a rock star in the field of surgery, but later on, in order to protect world peace, didn't I still go around stabbing people with a knife to save lives? Let's not talk about how old Gu called your grandson. I believe that he stabbed people, but whether his motive was for world peace or not, I think it's debatable." Feng Bujue said with a subtle expression. Oh, right. Xiao Tan didn't continue the topic with Brother Ju. Instead, he said, "The wedding venue is in Italy. You already know that, right?" Feng Bujue immediately sat up. "Of course I don't know." He paused for half a second. "Why did you say it in such a normal tone? The address printed on the wedding invitation is clearly in the suburbs of S City, right? It's in the suburbs, but you're not going there to attend the wedding. You're going there to take a plane." Xiao Tan continued, "Flying straight to Italy." Hey, is there an airport near that address?" Feng Bujue asked. "Does the plane belong to your family?" Brother Ju was just being sarcastic, but he didn't expect. The plane belongs to our family," Xiao Tan replied. F***CK. Needless to say, the airport belongs to Xiao Ling's family? Feng Bujue said in a desperate tone. "No," Xiao Tan replied, "but it should be their family managing it." I can't say too much. Anyway, there are runways and facilities for private and military aircraft taking off and landing there. You're a bunch of scum who abuse your position for personal gain," Feng Bujue said with a righteous look. "You're really capable of doing it. Also, you two are from China. It's one thing for you to have a wedding abroad, But what's with the two of you going to Europe for New Year's Eve dinner? New Year's Eve, Xiaotan said in a sincere and pained tone. In China, we can't get a table. He paused for 2 seconds and added, and this isn't something that can be solved with money. Feng Bujue couldn't refute. Okay, he thought about it again. Then, after we fly to Italy, yes, I didn't type wrong. Which city's airport will we land in? I have to say in advance that no matter which country we go to, I can't get a passport and a visa. There's a story behind this, but it's too long, so I won't go into it for now. After we land, if I'm immediately sent back to China, you have to be mentally prepared. Don't worry. Chief Gu already knows about your situation. He has already prepared a set of flawless documents for you, just in case. Also, we won't land at a civilian airport. Xiaotan said. So, the two of you have power in Axis Hades as well? Brother Ju narrowed his eyes. Don't ask me about this. Xiaotan said. Strictly speaking, I'm now a staff member of 9 sections, and I'm still in the probation period. Logically speaking, I shouldn't be telling you so much. Feng Bujue sighed. Another good young man who lost his position because of women and work. Before he finished, the door of the conference room opened, and Ruo Yu and Inyuechin walked in. Less than 2 seconds after the two entered the room, Feng Bujue jumped up from the sofa. Thank you for your hard work. Please sit down. I've already warmed the sofa for you. You washed my clothes with yours again, didn't you? You're going to delay the draft again this month, aren't you? The two sat down calmly and spoke in an emotionless tone. I'll be careful next time. I'll submit the draft in a few days. Feng Bujue put his hands together and lowered his head. Sigh. Okay, I'll wait for you for a few days. Soon, he got the response that he was looking for. Feng Bujue, who sighed in relief, changed his seat and sat on the other side of Xiaotan. Wang Tanji glanced at Feng Bujue with a gaze that said, Can you be any more shameless? He held it in for a long time before saying, Brother Ju, shut up. Feng Bujue had no intention of listening to his comment. A few minutes later, Su Huaishang and Xiao Ling finished preparing the scripts and came to the conference room. The 6 members of Underworld Frontline were all present. After Su Huaishang joined them, they had queued up in many scenarios as a team of 6. But tonight, according to the plan, they were going to challenge Nightmare Mode with 6 players. Chapter 1424. Feng Bujue, Level 57, Rain Like Rain. Level 54, Wang Tanji. Level 55, Laughing Soul. Level 54, Flower on the Rock. Level 54, Su Huaishang. Level 55, please select the game mode that your team wishes to join. You have selected Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. Please confirm. After everyone was ready, Feng Bujue was still the team leader, and he led the team into the scenario. Your team is joining Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. The maximum number of members in the team is 6. Your team has joined the queue. Coordinating neural connections. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. When the system announcement appeared, everyone in the login lobby felt that familiar sense of weightlessness, and they were submerged in darkness. The teleportation had begun. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. The dry and hoarse male voice said that as the introductory greeting came. Download complete. You are currently in Team Survival Mode, Nightmare. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there is a chance of triggering hidden side missions and special world building. Scenario cleared reward. Optional puzzle card X4. The scenario introduction will be played soon. The game will start immediately after that. When the members of Underworld Frontline saw the reward for clearing the dungeon, they were shocked. After all, even a random puzzle card X4 was already a very rare reward. But this time, the reward for clearing the dungeon was actually 4 random puzzle cards. In the current patch, where there was a puzzle card exchange, every player would have 3 to 5 unusable cards in their inventory. If they were given 4 selectable cards, they would only need to combine them with their original cards and exchange them at the exchange, and they would be able to come up with a large number of difficult puzzle card combinations. In other words, it was the same as giving them a powerful legendary tier equipment. Even though I had this feeling when I joined as a team of 6. Feng Bujue thought to himself. But from the content of the reward, perhaps this scenario will be more difficult than I expected. Abnormality detected. Reloading the scenario introduction. The next second, an abnormality that had never happened before confirmed Brother Ju's prediction. An unknown error occurred in the scenario. Disconnecting, encountered unknown data flow, initiating emergency process. The last part of the system voice seemed to have been cut off by some kind of force. And the players were not disconnected. The chaos scorched earth, the blood fiend realm. Dark clouds covered the sky, and ashes covered the ground. At this moment, in this land of slaughter full of demons and monsters, a teleportation array, surrounded by dozens of magic reliefs, was emitting a brilliance that was incompatible with the surrounding environment. Buzz, buzz, buzz. With a buzzing sound, 3 figures appeared in the formation. They were 3 players, Feng Bujue, Wang Tanji, and Su Huaishang. We finally succeeded for once. When Brother Ju and the others appeared, a youth who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old with a mature face stood by the side of the formation and muttered, "Old Wang?" Feng Bujue followed the voice and immediately recognized that it was Dianli King. Long time no see, Feng Bujue. Dianli King was too lazy to complain about the way Brother Ju addressed him, so he pretended not to hear it and greeted him directly. "Wow, you've grown quite a bit since we last met." When Feng Bujue last met Dianli King, the latter was still a child. "By the way, is that part of your new look?" Brother Ju turned his gaze to a strange bird that was standing on Dianli King's shoulder. It was an owl-like creature with a brown back and a white stomach. Its body was larger than a normal owl, and its head was that of a cat. It really was an owl with a cat's head. "It's me." To Brother Ju's surprise, 1 second later, the owl opened its mouth to answer him. "Beep." Feng Bujue blurted out an exclamation that was blocked, and then he recognized the strange bird. "Brother Ju?" "Yes, it's me." The Count of Script answered. "Many things have happened recently. In any case, I can only exist in this form, and in terms of power, I'm much weaker than before. Even though I don't want to interrupt your reunion." Su Huaishang suddenly interjected, "But I have to warn you. Something is coming." As expected of a super expert, she was very sensitive to danger and hostility. Just as she finished, a monster with bat wings on its back leaped out from the air about 20 meters away from them, and it swung its claws at them. The monster looked like a gargoyle, but its body was purple in color, and it was extremely thin. It should have the ability to fly silently and invisibly, because before Su Huaishang spoke, its body was still in stealth mode. The sound of its flight was also muffled by the wind, making it extremely difficult to detect. Whoosh! Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Just as the monster was about to pounce, the sound of an arrow piercing through the air whistled through the air. Immediately after, a poof sound was heard. Xiao Tan used Touch of Altair to launch this attack, and it hit the monster's head precisely between its brows. No matter how strong the monster was, there was no saving it now that its brain had been pierced by the arrow. A few seconds later, it fell to the ground due to inertia. Its twitching body and flowing brain matter announced its death. There's not even a safe time to get used to the environment after entering the dungeon. Xiao Tan had gotten used to the various situations in the game, and he was used to dealing with this kind of sudden danger calmly. Dian Xiaoqing heard that and laughed drily. What safe time is there to talk about when we're in the middle of chaos? It's not even safe to breathe here. As he spoke, the Count of Script silently flew down from his shoulder and landed next to the monster that had just died. He lowered his head to lick at the brain matter on the ground. As he did so, he said, "These teleportation reliefs are indeed too conspicuous. Let's go somewhere else to talk. I'm not going to ask why you summoned me here through the teleportation circle." Feng Bujue did not comment on the man's brain-eating behavior. He knew that there had to be a reason behind the Count of Script's action, so he cut to the chase. "I just want to ask, why are you doing something like this in the middle of chaos?" Can't you just set up a formation at the detective club? Good question. Jian Xiaoqing looked at his brother Zhu coldly and revealed a shocking news. Let me tell you something that is not that big of a deal at this stage. The detective club has been destroyed. Chapter 1425. The kingdom of the dead spirits was once a silver-white land built on bone sand. But now, it was completely unrecognizable. The raging demonic aura had dyed every grain of white sand in this land black, and the sky had become muddy and gloomy. This place seemed to have become the border of the chaotic scorched earth, waiting to be assimilated and swallowed. Buzz, buzz. On the scorched earth, a group of runes in a magic formation was buzzing. Beside the formation stood a strange man in a black robe and a gorgeous cloak. His skin was pure white, and each of his eyes had two pupils. His name was Taliome, one of the two popes of the Phantom Demon Church. There were originally three, but after Soul Snatcher's death, only Taliome and Samontir were left. Screech. After the buzzing lasted for a while, accompanied by the sound of energy surging, three figures appeared in the formation. Phew! We finally succeeded. When he saw the three people, Taliome let out a long sigh of relief. His body unconsciously swayed a few times as if he was about to lose all his strength. Taliome, after the players gained the ability to move, Xiaoling immediately recognized this guy and called out his name. Taliome also looked up at Ruoyu, Xiaoling, and Huajian. Long time no see. The three knights of the dead spirits. Where is this? Ruoyu observed the situation around her and then asked, Did you summon us? You don't recognize it. Taliome laughed bitterly. This is the kingdom of the dead spirits that you swore allegiance to. What? Huajian was shocked. This is... She did not finish her sentence. Instead, she looked around and asked directly, What happened during this period of time? It's a long story. Taliome said, We shouldn't stay here for long. Please follow me to see the Spirit King first. When we get to her, she will explain it to you. Wait. At this time, Xiaoling vigilantly asked, When did your illusory demon church become the Spirit King's subordinates? Taliome laughed sinisterly. Not a subordinate, but an ally. He paused and looked at the distant sky. You don't know. After that incident, there are almost no forces in the main universe that fight alone. Even if it's just surviving, it requires multiple alliances. At this point, he retracted his gaze and sighed softly. Anyway, all of you just have to come with me. The activation of the formation must have attracted their attention. It won't be long before redundant soldiers come to patrol. It'll be troublesome if we're held back by those fellows. The players only understood part of Taliome's words, and there were many questions that followed. To solve these questions, they could only take one step at a time. Thus, Ruoyu and the other two followed Taliome. The four of them entered a magic dimensional passage through a hidden entrance and gradually walked into the underground of the undead kingdom. Back to Feng Bujue and the others. These people who were on the real chaos-scorched earth also followed O.L. Wang and Brother Zun to a place that looked like an underground cavern. All the walls here were made of rocks that emitted high temperatures. Other than the lack of smoke, it felt like they had entered a sauna. Brother Zhu and Xiao Tan had not gone far, but they were already sweating profusely. They were so hot that they almost stuck out their tongues. However, Su Huaishan did not seem to be hot at all. She was calm and composed, and there was not even a drop of sweat on her face. She must have some method to avoid the heat. I say, Xiao Shang, why are you? At this point, Feng Bujue did not finish his question. Instead, he stopped halfway through his sentence. Why what? Su Huaishang asked. You know, it's... Feng Bujue said as he held the wall with one hand and made a particularly seductive gesture. Then he started a Magic Mike-style performance. He pulled at his collar and stuck out his tongue. He slowly used his hand to wipe off the sweat on his skin. Ha ha! Su Huaishang burst out laughing. Xiao Tan's lips twitched. He narrowed his eyes and mocked. You're not going to write anymore, because you're going to use this skill to make a living unless academic neat dancing becomes popular in the future. I'm afraid I won't be able to make a living from this. Feng Bujue said as he stopped his very amateur striptease. He turned to Su Huaishang and said, "But do you understand what I'm trying to say?" "Huh." Su Huaishang slowly suppressed her laughter and said, "I think I understand." She paused and then explained, "Actually, this is not that complicated. It's just one of the more advanced ways to use energy. It's similar to the technology one used to deal with the audio detection of sashimi. Of course, temperature isolation is much easier and less labor-intensive than resonance." Regarding the incident at Lin Lu Town, they had already discussed it before, so now that she explained it to them, Brother Ju and Xiao Tian basically understood. "Oh, but then again, no matter how hot I am, I won't," Su Huaishang said as she leaned against the wall with one hand. However, she did not do what Brother Ju did. Instead, she stuck out her tongue and made a funny face. "TSK, I'm just trying to liven up the atmosphere." Feng Bujue shrugged. "Next time you want to do something similar to liven up the atmosphere, can you at least give me a heads up first?" To their surprise, Dianli Wang, who walked in front of them, said, "Give me a few seconds to gouge my own eyes out." "You're so annoying. Are you in your rebellious phase?" Brother Ju did not back down and retorted, "Are you feeling lonely and confused? Are you afraid that some parts of your body have started to grow hair?" Oh well, Wang did not argue with Brother Ju because he knew he was no match for him. Therefore, he continued to walk silently and gave Brother Ju the middle finger. Even though players were not allowed to do this kind of action, NPCs did not have such restrictions. In a way, this was a kind of preferential treatment. The group walked for a few more minutes, and they reached a deeper level of the underground cavern. After passing through several winding and dangerous paths where they could see magma, they finally arrived at a large space with an extremely high ceiling. The players' eyes opened up. "It's us, Feng Bujue and the rest are here." After entering the space, Dianli Wang shouted loudly. His words echoed in this huge, empty cave, and then a heavy sound of rocks rubbing against each other rang out. Along with the voice, space began to distort. A few seconds later, in an empty space that was originally empty, a large area that looked like an optical camouflage opened. It was not until 1/3 of the invisible stone door was pushed open that Xiao Tan and Su Huaishang realized there was another entrance there. Brother Ju noticed this when he arrived. If someone did not open it from the inside, they would not have been able to see the stone door from any angle. "You're finally here." Before the door was fully open, Billy's voice came. But his voice sounded strange. It was like he was talking in a vat. It was a bit muffled. The players immediately looked in that direction and saw giant armored puppet with a height of about 2.5 meters was pushing open the stone door and walking out. Billy's voice came from the body of the puppet. When the armored mannequin completely exited the stone door, Brother Ju and the rest took a closer look and realized, on the left side of the mannequin, there was a large hole that ran from front to back. The irregular shape of the edge of the hole looked like it had been punched through by something. At that moment, both sides of the hole were sealed by glass, and inside the glass was Billy's head. Hey, what's going on?" Brother Ju asked immediately. "Have you merged with your brother?" Of course, Feng Bujue recognized the armor doll as Billy's younger brother, Bill. Beep, beep, beep. Before Brother Ju finished, Bill's square display face made an emoticon that said, "You can't believe it." "Huh." Hearing that, Billy chuckled bitterly. "You can put it that way." He added, "To sum it up, in a battle, I lost all my limbs except for my head, and my brother lost his power source and the ability to speak." He paused. On the bright side, now his emoticon function is much better. Chapter 1426. After a short conversation, Billy was ready to lead Feng Bujue and the others into the hidden space behind the stone door. When Brother Ju arrived at the door, he realized that the scene behind the door was very familiar. "Is this the ship?" He looked at the deck and the mast on the other side of the door. "Yes," Billy replied. "I think you're not unfamiliar with this place, right?" Before Billy's voice died away, Feng Bujue had already realized what the scene in front of him was. Queen Anna's revenge. Ha! Billy chuckled. The answer was obvious. Please. Since Billy had said, after you, Fong Bujue did not say anything more. He took the lead and stepped through the door. After passing through the door, he had a clear view of the entire ship. That's right. This was the deck of the Queen's Revenge. When they looked back, they could see the stone door behind them. The huge stone door frame was fixed to the deck with wooden stakes and ropes. There was also a circular magic circle drawn on the deck below. Several seconds later, Brother Jew turned his head to look out the side of the ship. He immediately realized that there was not even water underneath the ship. At that moment, Queen's Revenge was floating in the void. The ship was surrounded by a grayish substance. There was some light that was similar to moonlight shining through the grayish substance, but with this light, one could barely see through it with the naked eye. Therefore, there were many fluorescent lanterns on the ship to provide illumination. We meet again, Fong Bujue. Just as the three players, Old Wong, and Billy passed through the door one after another, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded. Brother Jew looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar face, Blackbeard. You? Even though Fong Bujue could still recognize that it was Blackbeard, the latter had changed a lot. What happened? Ha! Blackbeard let out a slightly bitter laugh and limped out of the cabin a few meters away with Kane. Isn't this obvious at a glance? As he spoke, he used his walking stick to knock on his leg that no longer listened to him. His calf made two thumping sounds. It was clear that what was in his pants was no longer flesh and blood, but something like wood. I was crippled by someone. Fong Bujue didn't ask the question, is your self-healing ability not working? Because the answer was self-evident. If there was a way to cure it, Blackbeard wouldn't have to wear prosthetics and use crutches. Then, Brother Jew thought for a moment, then looked around. Your crew. Just now, he felt that something was wrong. Why was it that other than a few of them, there was not a single pirate on the deck? Blackbeard laughed dryly again. He raised a bottle of rum in his hand and took a sip. What do you think? Fong Bujue didn't want to say, but he also didn't want to laugh. He still remembered clearly the first time he met Blackbeard. At that time, Blackbeard's steps were powerful, his voice was like thunder, and his every movement was like a conqueror of the sea. He only needed to stand tall and firm, and dozens of ferocious pirates would be silenced. But now, the person who appeared in front of Brother Jew was like an old drunkard. Not only was his voice so hoarse that it made people feel uncomfortable, but his eyes were also lifeless. If he didn't have his walking stick, it seemed like he wouldn't be able to walk. Rustle, rustle, rustle. While they were talking, Bill had already dragged the stone door and closed it again. From the lava cave on the other side of the door, the place where the door used to be was now an empty space. Looks like you two already know each other. Why don't you make the introductions? Billy then turned to Brother Jew. Fong Bujue thought for a moment before turning to signal the two players behind him. This is Xiao Tan, you should know him already. And this is Su Huaishang. She is quite famous among us travelers from another world. I believe you've heard of her. He paused, and then tilted his head toward Bill. Billy, after the twilight of the gods, he took over the court of truth. For some reason, he only has his head left. Bill, Billy's brother. He was originally the manager at Brother Zun's place, but now, he shrugged and didn't comment. He continued to point. O.L. Wong and Brother Zun are respectively the remnant of the previous era and the demigod of this era. They originally controlled the detective club in the main universe, but now, you've seen it for yourself. He paused for half a second before moving his gaze to Blackbeard. Captain Blackbeard, a great pirate who returned from the Sea of Chaos. He is as powerful as the four pillars of divinity. Regarding what happened to him, he changed his tone and turned to Blackbeard. Mr. Captain, why don't you tell us about it? Why don't we let Billy start first? Blackbeard said as he sat down with his back against the mast, looking lazy. It's best to start from the beginning. Hearing that, the players looked at Billy, or rather, the puppet head in the glass cabin at Billy's ribs. Where should I start? Billy's voice came through the glass. Based on the timeline, the beginning of all this should have happened when you left Devil's Maw Island. The Yuna's words was undeniably Fong Bujue. The first thing that X-23 did was to greatly reduce the strength of your data so that for a long time, you would not be able to join any scenario related to the main universe's core characters or events, Billy said. I'm sorry. If possible, I wish to ask you to temporarily leave Thriller Paradise for a while. At that moment, the last thing that X-23 said to Fong Bujue at Devil's Maw Island flashed across the latter's mind. After ensuring that you wouldn't interfere, a war started. Billy paused. Of course, when I say war, it is to pay respect to the dead warriors. In reality, due to the difference in power between the two sides, it would be more appropriate to describe it as a cleanup or a massacre. X-23 launched an attack on the main universe. Fong Bujue reacted quickly and followed the man's train of thought. Not the entire main universe, but everything in the main universe that she thought should be destroyed, Billy replied. What is the basis of her differentiation? Brother Ju asked. Then, you should ask her herself, Billy replied. In any case, based on what I know, other than War Demon, including the few of you here, the various forces in the main universe are all on her cleanup list. What about War Demon? Fong Bujue asked. Unfortunately, he has joined forces with her, Billy replied. Hey, that doesn't sound good. Although Xiao Tan did not understand the overly complicated settings, he still had some understanding of X-23 and War Demon's power. Yes, Billy replied. For people other than them, this is naturally bad news. What is the reason for their joining forces? Fong Bujue asked. Was War Demon subdued by X-23 with her power? Or do they have a common goal? I don't know, Billy replied bluntly. But I think the possibility of them having a common goal is higher. Let's not talk about whether X-23 can suppress War Demon in terms of power. Even if she can, War Demon is not the kind of existence that will yield to power. So, they must have reached a consensus on something. Brother Ju's mind spun. After a few seconds of silence, he said, counting from Devil's Maw Island, based on the time here, how long has this war lasted? From the perspective of you humans, it is quite long, about 2 years, Billy replied. But from our perspective, this is definitely a blitz war. At this point, he turned his eyes to the Count of Script, who had flown to the side of the ship, and said, I'll leave the rest to you, Brother Count. Okay. The Count of Script nodded and continued. First, I want to talk about the recent worsening of the social atmosphere in the main universe. For some reason, he took on the tone of a leader lecturing his subordinates. As you can see, even an excellent young man like Billy is casually addressing me as Brother Zune. This was not how it was in the main universe before this, but in recent years, everyone's bottom line seems to have been pushed to its limit. Many young men who were once well-mannered are now full of trash talk, and their actions are becoming more and more unprincipled. At the end of the day, I think Fong Bujue should be held responsible for this. Agreed. When Brother Zune said this, Blackbeard picked up the wine bottle and shouted at the top of his lungs. His expression seemed to indicate that he deeply agreed with this. Hey, we've gone off topic. Why are you suddenly talking about me? Brother Ju complained. Just to liven up the atmosphere. The Count of Script flapped his wings. Don't you think the conversation earlier was a bit depressing? I don't know whether you succeeded in livening up the atmosphere or not. Fong Bujue narrowed his eyes. But I am quite sure you are one of the people who have reached the bottom line, huh? To his surprise, the Count of Script showed a fearless attitude. If your home is razed to the ground, your form is restricted to the form of an eagle, and you have to rely on eating brains to maintain your power and consciousness. I believe you will have no interest in considering your own morals. Oh, Fong Bujue put on a cold face. Then why don't we start from the point where your home is razed to the ground? Sigh. The Count of Script sighed deeply and said thoughtfully, actually, it's not that complicated. That day, Billy came to the detective club for tea. Dinley Wong and I sat and chatted with him for a while, and then, without warning, the War Demon barged in. What do you mean by barged in without warning? Fong Bujue asked. Of course, it means literally, O.L. Wong said. If he gave you a heads up, would it still be called barging in? I mean, Brother Jew continued. With your power, didn't you feel anything when the war demon approached? Didn't the detective club set up something like a defense circle? You're right, the Count of Script said. Brother Zune continued. Logically speaking, for a super demon king at the level of Do-Mo, as long as he exists in the same space as us, even if we are thousands of miles apart, we can roughly sense which direction he is in. Other than that, the detective club has something like a defense circle as well, and it is very powerful, so powerful that even the 4 pillars of divinity would need some time to break through it. I believe there is a but here. Su Huaishang had already guessed what the Count of Script was going to say, so she interjected. But the Count of Script did not disappoint her. With the technology of the explosion tunnel, the above 2 points become meaningless. Isn't that Origin's unique technology? Xiaotan asked. Does that mean Lu Te also know? Feng Bujue denied his speculation. It has nothing to do with Lu Te. She is 23. He paused. With her current power, be it the sandbox, the explosion tunnel, or any other technology, it is not that difficult to replicate them. He scratched his chin and said, With this technology, as long as the enemy's coordinates can be confirmed, the war demon can ignore all kinds of external defenses in a very short amount of time and directly reach the target. Yes, and at the time, we knew nothing about this. The Count of Script added. After the war demon barged in, he had no intention of chatting with us. He used his right hand to punch through Bill's body, and at the same time, he used his left hand to use psychic power to crush Billy's body. He used what he did in those 2 seconds to explain his intention. Seeing this, the Count of Script immediately used all of his magic power to connect to the magic energy storage device inside the detective club. Using this powerful magic resonance, he successfully suppressed the war demon's next move. In the next few seconds, I grabbed Billy and Bill and activated the runic array that I thought I'd never need to use. Dianli Wang continued. It's an emergency escape runic array. He paused for a second and said darkly. Until the 4 of us were teleported out, the Count of Script suppressed the war demon for a total of 8 seconds. These 8 seconds have caused permanent damage to the mana pool inside his body. Therefore, he can only maintain this relatively relaxed physiological state. Only then, his condition will not worsen. As for us, at this moment, Billy continued. As you can see, my remaining head has replaced Bill's destroyed energy core. His body has solved the problem of my mobility. Fortunately, us brothers can communicate with each other through some kind of telepathy that outsiders can't hear. So, there's no problem in communicating with each other. As he spoke, Bill's face made the same expression, but it was unclear what it meant. However, Billy's next sentence took a turn. The Court of Truth was not so lucky. Based on what I found out later, when the war demon ambushed the detective club, the Court of Truth was attacked as well. The ones who attacked the Court of Truth were the redundant soldiers that had been modified by 23. Chapter 1427. So, she has mastered Link and Ed's technology as well. Feng Bujue repeated this conclusion in his mind. Then, he went through all the possibilities that this conclusion could lead to. Several seconds later, he asked, Earlier, you said she has also modified the redundancy? Yes, Billy replied. To allow these guys to survive in the main universe for a long time, 23rd made some modifications to their structure. First of all, this didn't sound like something an NPC would say. Second of all, even if he could say it, where did he find out about this? How did you know? Feng Bujue asked. An anomaly by the name of Red Iron told us. Billy said. I believe you know him. He is from Organization Z. Oh. Feng Bujue's brows relaxed slightly. Is Red Iron still alive? Hearing this news, Brother Jew was quite relieved. He was really worried that Red Iron and Wing had been killed by 23rd on Devil Munching Island. If that was the case, then he would have to take some responsibility. Now that he heard that Red Iron was still alive, Feng Bujue sighed in relief. Since Red Iron was still alive, then Wing, who shared the same body with him, should be fine as well. He is alive, and he has given us quite a lot of useful information, Billy replied. If not for him, perhaps the few of us would not be here talking to you right now. Fong Bujua nodded, and his mind wandered back to the information that he had just heard. Then, as you said, 23RD's modification is to allow the redundancy to survive in the main universe for a long time. Does that mean the original redundancy will not be able to survive here for a long time? Yes, Billy replied. The redundancy. To put it bluntly, they are low-level redundant creatures created by higher-level anomalies. Compared to the complicated anomalies, the redundancy is very simple and pure in terms of data. Therefore, when they're active in the main universe, the highest consciousness can easily locate them and wipe them out. In other words, the modification of 23 has caused them to become less pure. Su Huaishang asked as she picked up on one of the key points in the conversation. Hearing that, the Count of Script added with a smile. It is not that difficult. Actually, she has collected the data of various creatures that originally existed in the main universe and randomly added them to the redundancies production line so that each redundancy will have some data of the native creatures in the main universe. In this way, it will be much more difficult for the system to find the coordinates of these redundant soldiers. Furthermore, the complexity of wiping them out will greatly increase, Fong Bujua said with a smile. Fong Bujua immediately understood what the man meant and added, "That is indeed a good idea. Is this the time to admire others?" Dian Xiaoqing used his unhappy expression to mock his brother Ju. Before Fong Bujua could answer, to stop him from arguing, Billy quickly added, "Actually, the normal redundancy is not the biggest problem. After the modification, they have lost their data purity and are actually weaker than the original. Even though there's an endless number of them, we are not completely helpless against them. But among the redundancy army, there's a group of extremely troublesome fellows, the sweepers. Sweepers were independent redundant disk arrays. When Link and Ed created these creatures, they used the codename RAID, redundant arrays of independent disks. They designed them according to the concept of the main force responsible for clearing out powerful players and NPCs during a hyperdimensional invasion. The intelligence of the sweepers was similar to the redundancy army. They were not AI life forms, and they did not have the ability to think or learn. They only knew how to follow orders. But compared to the redundancy army, the sweepers' combat ability had a qualitative leap. Each of them had the combat ability of a level 3 anomaly, and they were all equipped with tactical control modules. No way. Fong Bujua's expression shifted slightly. A mass-produced creature of that level cannot be modified with simple methods like the redundancy army. But 23 still managed to modify it successfully, Billy said. Billy continued, "Although we don't really understand the theory behind it, according to Red Iron, she used Infinite's genetic data on the sweepers under her command. What the F***CK?" In his agitation, Fong Bujua cursed out loud, and to his surprise, he was not censored. Based on your knowledge, how many sweepers are there?" "That's right. I'm not sure," Billy replied. "But there shouldn't be too many because they basically appear alone. The only time they appeared in a group was the day they attacked my pirate group." At this second, Blackbeard naturally took over Billy's words and said with his hoarse voice, I remember it very clearly. 17. Not one more. Not one less." He was like a standard drunkard, mixing in these unnecessary nonsense, as if waiting for his brain to catch up with the rhythm of his words. "That dusk, 17 people that you called sweepers, leading countless redundancy army. On the sea, they surrounded Queen Anna's revenge. Those bastards didn't say a word to us. There was no negotiation, no mercy, and they didn't accept surrender. Before the war, my crew understood that this was a kind of battle they had never fought before. Our opponents didn't care about glory, bounty, or anything else. These guys without blood and tears until they couldn't move at all, they only had one goal, and that was to kill all of us. Speaking of this, Blackbeard raised the bottle and took another sip of rum. Then he looked solemn and said 4 very heavy words, "We won." A large number of redundant soldiers had torn open the space and crawled through it. Quickly leave through the stone door. Run back to the chaos, and we'll figure out a solution there. The next second, the Count of Script shouted. Actually, it was fine if he did not say that, because this was their only way out. When a strange sound came, Billy had telepathically told Bill to push open the stone door. Thankfully, the soldiers needed time to invade the dimension and get close to the ship. These few seconds were enough for them to escape. Soon, the stone door opened again. Billy and his brother ran out first. Brother Ju and O.L. Wong followed closely behind. Xiao Tan, Su Huaishang, and Feng Bujue also walked out the stone door. "Hey, what are you doing spacing out?" When they reached the door, Feng Bujue turned back and saw that Blackbeard was still leaning against the mast, drinking silently. "You can't get up on your own?" As he spoke, Brother Ju wanted to go over and help him up. "You can go." But Blackbeard waved at him and said in a calm tone, "The great Captain Blackbeard will not abandon the ship and run for his life." Feng Bujue knew what that meant, and he respected the man's decision. "Okay." Brother Ju stopped. He looked at the man for a few seconds and said darkly, "Goodbye, Captain." The stone door closed again. Blackbeard was the only one left on the ship. The Dominator of the Sea had never looked so calm before. In this calmness, there was even a hint of sadness. When the tens of thousands of redundant soldiers surrounded him, Blackbeard stood up unhurriedly. He raised the walking stick in his hand and swept it, easily smashing the stone door not far away into pieces. When the pieces fell to the ground, the magic circle on the deck also dimmed, announcing that the portal had completely lost its effect. Yo-ho. At this moment, Blackbeard paced slowly on the deck and started to sing with his hoarse voice. "We drink, we plunder, we do whatever we want. We can get everything without spending a single cent. We will take care of you first, then we will take your girl. We are the Chaos Pirates." When he walked across the deck, many faces of the past appeared in front of him. It was as if those people were still on the ship, right next to him. Mr. Volger was still sitting on the barrel, scolding the clumsy newcomers. Erdini was standing at the helm, chewing on an apple. Garlic, Godfrey, and Marty were still under the mast, playing their little game of poker. Nezru was still holding the mirror like a fool, tidying up his cake. The two real fools, the Mark brothers, were still waxing the door of the captain's cabin under the persuasion of the hoarse voice. At this moment, Blackbeard sang that line. "Let's sing Y-O-H-O together." But no one responded to his Y-O-H-O because he was the only one left on the ship. "Let's sing Y-O-H-O again." Blackbeard knew this, but he still sang. "We roam the chaos sea. We brave the hurricane. We scare your balls. We are the Chaos Pirates." By the time he sang this line, a redundant soldier had already boarded the ship and rushed toward Blackbeard without stopping. Blackbeard grabbed the soldier's neck with one arm and stopped him from rushing forward. Then he exerted force and twisted the soldier's head off. "We leave our hometown. We leave our mother for plunder and revelry. We will cut off your ears, break your toes, and make you drink our urine." More and more soldiers boarded the ship, and sweepers appeared among them. But Blackbeard didn't stop singing when he was facing the enemy. "If you sail to our sea, you'd better listen to this law first. We will take your ship and throw you into the sea. We will happily smash your face, cut off your penis, and feed it to the crocodiles. Because we are the Chaos Pirates." The number of soldiers was still increasing. They kept pouring out from the gray clouds and covered the entire Queen Anna's Revenge like locusts. Blackbeard's figure was gradually covered and swallowed in the vast sea of soldiers. But until the last moment, he was still using his injured voice to sing the pirate's song at the top of his lungs. He sang the line that no one would respond to. "Let's sing Y-O-H-O. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.